Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Had the Quirk of a Kryptonian? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Izuku Midoriya had always loved heroes. From the moment he could actually think, he remembered adoring and admiring heroes. All heroes, from the tales of heroes dressed in spandex from the pre-Quirk world, to heroes in the very real and modern era. His favorite one of all time, however, was All Might. All Might, the symbol of peace. All Might, the definition of a hero. All Might, justice incarnate. Izuku, for as long as he could remember, wanted to be a hero just like All Might. He wanted to be a hero, the hero. His dreams, however, would come to an end after a visit to the doctor's office revealed something that made his heart stop. "He's quirkless," the doctor said. The words echoed throughout Izuku's mind, and he found himself failing to remember much at all after that. The rest of the visit, the ride home, hell, even the next few months were a blur. During that time, he'd been introduced to what loneliness felt like. After being diagnosed as being quirkless, the other kids actively avoided him, Kaken included. That hurt him more than anything. Kaken, Katsuki Bakugo, his best friend, seemed to stick with him for a bit, before a sudden twist in his behavior happened, and he was alone. The next year or two after, he failed at making friends, or anything on quirks, though he was updating a few journals he had on others' quirks. His most recent one, Hero Journal No. 5, even had sketches of the heroes and classmates who the quirks were owned by. Izuku may not have been special when it came to quirks, but the boy could draw well even at 8 years old. It wasn't put up on a museum wall good, but it was good. Izuku would be alone for a bit, before he asked to be enrolled into a dojo. The young boy still wanted to be a hero, against all odds. His mother, Inko, tried to avoid the topic, still not knowing what to do. Her motherly instincts were conflicted. On one hand, he could learn self-defense at the least. On the other, he could get hurt. It took Izuku nearly 4 months to convince her. The dojo was a good choice in the long run. Not only did he learn martial arts, or start to, he knew self-defense at least, but he had finally made a friend. Her name was Itsuka Kendo. Her quirk was increasing the size of her hands, which Izuku found awesome and amazing. She had earned herself a spot in Hero Journal #Time Passed Again, and it led to a moment, a single moment, that changed everything for Izuku. He hadn't noticed the car barreling down the road, but he did notice the fact that something hit him and twisted its form around him. The car, which had a totaled front courtesy of Izuku, stopped in place, the driver looking panicked and scrambling out of his car. Inko had finally managed to grab her son, pulling him out of the road and pulling her into him, the mother crying a river as she thought her son had been a goner. Izuku, however, wasn't feeling sad, or angry, or anything. In fact, he had felt elated. When they had gotten home, the boy had been freaking out, and wondering what else he could do. He would find out over the course of a year or so that everything was amplified. His speed, his strength, his sight, and he could have sworn he flew or at least hovered at one point. Itsuka, of course, found out when they were fighting. She attempting to punch him, and immediately regretted as her hand's nerves began to blare with pain. After that though, she was just as elated for Izuku as he had been when he found out. Over the course of the next few years, Izuku had become more confident. He could still be incredibly awkward at times, as no matter how much more confident he became, he was still Izuku. And Izuku was an awkward and kind-hearted kid. He hadn't made any friends, as the kids still believed he didn't have a quirk, or just couldn't move past how he was quirkless. The reason why no one believed him was because of the fact that he didn't care to show it off, unless the situation called for it, which was never. Itsuka had long moved away by now, though they kept in contact, Izuku excitedly writing down any new information about her quirk, and he helping him experiment with his own quirk. So far, he could lift about 300 kilograms of weight, and could reach a top speed of 80 kilometers per hour. He had still not made progress of flying, but he could jump high into the air, something that, to Izuku, was just as good for the moment. At the age of 13, Deku had begun to train his body, pushing it higher and higher. At one point, he had discovered a new ability when his vision went red and beams shot out of his eyes. He hadn't been expecting it, and immediately closed his eyes, rapidly blinking. It was gone. No matter how much he tried to do it again, it didn't come back. Izuku would add second quirk, laser eyes, to his own entry that day. He didn't even know it was possible to have a second quirk, but he had already begun to think it was possible after he swore he hovered over a staircase for a second before dropping down. At the age of 16, the present day, Izuku had barely made it to school on time, too busy writing down the newest pro-hero's quirks, possible weaknesses, limitations, etc. He sat down in his seat, minding his own business for most of the class. Izuku Midoriya was not a bodybuilder, but his body was a masterpiece. His clothing stuck tight to his figure, while not hugging it, but it was enough to show the fact that the boy was fit. He stood at a comfortable 6 foot, his green eyes seeming to sparkle. He had bangs, but one stood out in particular. A rather wispy S-curl, right on the center. Izuku had given up long ago to get rid of it. Since you're all third years, it's time for you to think seriously about your future, his instructor began, looking out towards the class. I'll pass out handouts for your future plans now, but... The instructor snatched his own desk rather violently, pretty much planning to go into the hero course, right? The instructor threw his own papers behind him, sounding rather joyful with that last bit. The students all yelled yes, all showing off their quirks because they had the opportunity to. Izuku kept his head down, putting the finishing touches on his sketch of Mount Lady for her hero entry. The teacher attempted to reason with the children, saying how as cool as their quirks were, it was against school rules to use them. Teach. Began a new voice, a red-eyed boy shifting his view from the ceiling to the teacher in question. Don't lump us all in the same group. I'm not gonna stuck at the bottom with the rest of these rejects. His name was Katsuki Bakugo, and he was immediately ganged up on by the rest of the class, exclaiming how unnecessary that really was. Bakugo panicked slightly. You all should shut up like the extras you are. The teacher, seeing a chance, spoke out. Oh, if I remember correctly, you want to go to UA High, right, Bakugo? He read it off a paper, and the rest of the class sounded surprised, muttering things about how prestigious it really was. Bakugo began to fix himself in his seat, jumping up into his desk. That's exactly why you all are extras. I aced the mock test. I'm the only one at this school who could possibly get into UA. A new fire lit in the violent teenager's eyes. I'll definitely surpass All Might and become the top hero. He clenched his fist and threw into the air with this proclamation. The teacher continued, unfazed by Bakugo's behavior. Oh yeah, Midoriya wanted to go to UA too, right? The students looked at Deku for a good long moment, before murmurs of agreement went throughout the room. The only one who didn't agree was Bakugo, who stated his opinion rather loudly. He slammed his hands into Midoriya's desk, Izuku only slightly backing away. What? You? What chance do you have? Bakugo shouted loudly before standing up straight. You have no chance. You're below the rejects. You're quirkless. The class began to quietly murmur, wondering just how Bakugo didn't know. Then the bell rang. Bakugo backed off for a moment, before backing off completely. It hurt Bakugo to say that. It had been hurting for years. But he had to try and deter him from being a hero. Not for Bakugo's sake, but for his own. But he wasn't winning this battle. He walked out of the classroom after grabbing his things, scoffing in Izuku's direction again before completely walking out of the classroom. He didn't feel like trying to deter Izuku anymore at the moment. Izuku thanked whatever god he had watching over him for making Bakugo go away, packing up his stuff, and holding on to Hero Journal #. He walked out of his class, taking his phone out of his pocket and seeing a message from Itsuka. He smiled as he opened the text, seeing what she had said. Itsuka, found a new thing I can do with my quirk. Izuku raised an eyebrow, not expecting that. He'd have to find his older journal again, as she hadn't found anything new with her quirk in a long time, other than the fact that with the increased mass, she could lift heavier things. Izuku? Itsuka, I can control how big my hands become, and which parts actually grow. The last part isn't very helpful. Izuku, No, that's very helpful. Izuku, being the fanatic of quirks he was, would grab any information he could. Itsuka, okay. I got homework to do, so. Bye. Izuku, bye. Izuku pocketed his phone, his brain having autopiloted him thus far. He came across the tunnel he used when going home. Going through it, he thought he saw nothing. Okay, maybe he saw something but thought it was a RA. Izuku turned around to find anything but a rat. A sludge monster formed in front of him, and his eyes went wide. A villain? Midoriya, while living a world centered around heroes and villains, had never actually come across either. Well, this close, anyways. A medium-sized invisibility cloak. The villain spoke, his voice distorted, before launching itself towards him. Izuku's eyes went wide as he threw himself to the side, his quirk's speed coming in handy, and his hero jewel number 13 being thrown to the side. The villain's rather large smile became even bigger. And with speed too. Izuku's body went onto autopilot, dodging the attacks while testing out things. Like punches. They were ineffective. The manhole cover would fly up, and a rather big figure would emerge from it. The villain stiffened up, looking at the figure with a glint of fear. All Might would stand, seeing the villain and a schoolboy. A rather mature-looking schoolboy too. He focused on the villain. He stamped a foot down, power radiating from it. It's fine now, young man. I am here. All Might would toss a bag was carrying to the side. Izuku blinked, not expecting that. Actually, he wasn't expecting any of this. His mouth gaped open at the sight of All Might. All Might. He breathed, his eyes wide with surprise. The next thing Izuku knew, All Might and the villain engaged in a fight, it ending very quickly with All Might pulling back his fist and yelling out his attack, Texas Smash. It barely even connected with him, connecting with the air, and the sludge villain exploded, knocked unconscious. At least he thinks so? He didn't really know. He blinked for a few moments. All Might looked at the young man worried. Was he okay? Was he too late? He took a step towards him. Young man? Are yo? He was interrupted by Midoriya releasing years of pent-up fanboyism upon him. Ayaha wahiaha. He rushed towards him, his hero journal somehow being picked up in the process. He opened his journal up, his eyes gleaming with excitement. You're All Might, the #1 hero. See, could you sign this? Yes, Midoriya had failed miserably at suppressing his fanboy side. All Might laughed loudly, grabbing the notebook and reaching into his pocket, getting a marker, and signing it before handing it back to the young man. Yes, I know who I am. But who are you? All Might asked in between laughs. He was impressed by the boy, seeing as he had managed to hold his own against the sludge villain. If you called dodging holding your own. And my name? I'm Izuku Midoriya. Izuku said excitedly. At least he had stopped vibrating in place, though. Well, young Midoriya, I have to thank you for your help today. Since you distracted him, I was able to end the fight. The #1 hero would tell the young man before him, before he went through his bag and took out a few bottles of soda, and chugged them, before proceeding to contain the sludge into the bottles. Midoriya was just standing there, his eyes sparkling more than usual. He met All Might. After a few quiet moments passed by, All Might walked back up to young Midoriya. He held up a bottle, before putting it in his pocket. Well, I have to bring him to the police station. I hope you stay safe, young Midoriya. Izuku nodded, and All Might began to emit steam. Oh shit. All Might laughed as he crouched down, into a jumping position. Goodbye, he would say, before launching himself into the air. Izuku stood there, wondering if this was a dream or not. He pinched himself and found out it was not a dream, wincing, wondering why he pinched so hard. Elsewhere, it appeared All Might had not secured the bottle as well as he had thought. It slipping out of his pocket and falling to the street below. Bakugo was walking with 2 of his lackeys through an alley. It was a shortcut to his house, though Bakugo expected them to PSS off before they actually reached his house. One of the lackeys, disturbed by the silence, spoke up. Hey, Katsuki, you held back today, didn't you? Bakugo immediately knew what he was talking about, especially when the second added, Normally you say a lot worse. Bakugo looked at them, his mouth a straight line, his red eyes gleaming with anger. He probably already heard enough to not get in my way, Bakugo replied, kicking a bottle with an odd, green liquid inside. Yeah, probably, the second lackey agreed. The three stopped. Bakugo snarled, crushing a can he had in his hand before outright causing it to explode, turning it into ashes. He flashed back to a memory, one back from when he and Midoriya were considered friends. We're gonna be heroes, Kakin. Young Midoriya said, running around in an All Might onesie. Nothing will stand in our way. Bakugo snapped out of it. He's just a teenager stuck in his childhood dreams, Bakugo growled, before continuing, just watching him sees me off. In all actuality it did. Why couldn't he understand? He stood no chance without a quirk, he'd get himself killed. The two lackeys looked at each other, before looking at Bakugo. How about we go to the arcade? One suggested, and Bakugo grunted in response. Maybe destroying these extras in video games would help calm him down. Then, the two lackeys' faces twisted in horror, pointing to behind Bakugo. What is that? Bakugo would turn around and come face to face with the sludge monster from before. Him kicking open his temporary prison had been helpful for the villain. An invisible cloak with a great quirk. Its jaws opened wide, as it made its move on Bakugo. Elsewhere, Midoriya was taking a shortcut through the city when he felt the rumble. An explosion? From where? Why? Those were his initial questions, before his mind went to work. A battle means heroes. Heroes in battle means the ability to analyze their quirks. Midoriya's brows furrowed as he began to sprint towards the site of the explosion, making sure he had a firm grip on Hero Journal #. This was going to be a family heirloom. Well, first he needs to make sure he has kids to pass it on to, but that's not the point. When he arrived, he found heroes, pro-heroes, standing around. The sludge villain. How did he escape? All Might had captured him. Unknown to Midoriya, Toshinori, All Might, was standing at the other end of the crowd, lamenting his failure. He slammed his arm into the wall he stood against, panting heavily. The hero had lost his ability to be a hero. 24. He had a time limit, 3 hours a day. The rest of it? He was forced to spend as a nearly skeletal being. Midoriya stood there, wondering why everyone was standing around when he saw it. For a split second, Katsuki Bakugo, his childhood friend, was in the sludge monster's grasp. Midoriya didn't know what happened next, other than he was there within a second, his eyes glowing a deep red. The pro-heroes blinked in shock, seeing this schoolboy just appear out of thin air. Midoriya grabbed Katsuki by the shirt collar, unknowingly tearing up while doing so. Deku, what are you doing here, dumbass? You looked like you needed help. Midoriya shouted in response, before slamming his fist through the sludge monster and tearing him free of the sludge monster's grip. The pro-heroes, Toshinori, and the crowd took a step back as Katsuki was tossed into the arms of Death Arms, which was really ironic. Katsuki scrambled out of his grip, looking towards Izuku and the sludge monster. Dumbass! Katsuki screamed out, what are you doing? Midoriya, however, didn't hear him. Not this time. Midoriya ducked a swing from one of the sludge monster's tentacle, before taking another one head-on. The schoolboy was sent back a foot or two, before he snarled, tears running down his face. He had nearly lost his friend to this monster. He pulled his arm back, his uniform sleeve tearing apart from the speed he did so, before he threw it towards the sludge villain. The force was something else entirely. Toshinori barely managed to grab onto the pole near him as the crowd was sent back, along with the pro-heroes. Mount Lady, who wasn't able to do anything, had a hard time standing up. The shockwave was quick and powerful, and the sludge villain exploded once more, unconscious again. The skies grew dark as rain began to slowly drop down. He had created rain by punching. Izuku looked at his own hand, his eyes wide as he began to try and calculate how he did that. Toshinori finally came back to his senses and realized what had happened. His pupils dilated, becoming smaller. That boy had run out with the intention of saving his friend when pro-heroes did nothing. He gasped as he realized what he had found. A hero. A hero at heart, not in profession. My successor. He whispered quietly, his eyebrow lifting upwards. Oh, how Izuku wished things went smoothly afterwards. The heroes collected the sludge and safely handed it over to the police. After that, Izuku found himself on the end of a scolding from not one, not two, but 3 heroes. Geez, there's a limit to how rash you can be. Death Arms spoke in a raised voice, his hands on his hips. He was a bulkier hero, wearing a caution tape visor, gauntlets, pants and a tight green vest. Beside him, his fellow pro heroes, Mount Lady, and Kamui Wood, who were on the sides of him. Mount Lady, a short, slender blonde with a mostly white suit with blue and orange, was currently sending the most hate-filled glare she could muster. Izuku sweat from its intensity. There was no reason to put yourself in danger. Kamui Wood continued for Death Arms. There was a few seconds pause before he continued. Kamui Wood was a taller, yet still shorter than Death Arms, hero. He had what looked like a black shirt and pants, a wooden mask and helmet covering his head, and his arms exposed. His boots or shoes were also made of wood. That being said, that was awesome. Kamui Wood's hands were now in front of him, splayed out. Death Arms chuckled at his ally's comment, while Mount Lady held a look of betrayal. The younger heroine was livid with this kid, because he made her out to be a joke. At least that's what she thought. I have to say, I agree with that. You have some real power, kid. Death Arms would say this while crossing his arms. When you become a pro, you should come to my agency. Izuku blinked, not at all expecting this, but he got up and laughed nervously, nodding. Mount Lady's glare intensified tenfold, and Izuku forced himself to look away. Stay safe, kid. And don't throw yourself out to any other fights. Kamui Wood called out as Izuku quickly walked away. He would then turn his head towards Mount Lady, sighing. He then saw a good opportunity. You keep staring like that, and I'll start thinking you're a cradle snatcher. Mount Lady gawked, a squeal-like noise coming out of her throat as she turned her glare towards Kamui, who was currently holding back laughter as he looked at her face light up like a Christmas light. He stole my debut. And I am not that old. Kamui gained a tick mark on his forehead. Are you kidding? You did the same thing. Besides, no one besides the crowd saw him. Mount Lady raised a finger, ready to make a counter-argument, before lowering it and looking towards the ground. Oh, you're right. Death Arms burst out laughing at his teammates' antics. Izuku was walking home, having grabbed his hero journal number 13, and whatever else fell out of his pocket. Then he heard running and shouting. Wait, that sounded fam. Do you? And there he is. Izuku was wondering when he'd show up. You didn't help me. I was all right by myself. Katsuki lied through his teeth. Kataki was close to passing out when he'd be saved. By Deku. Wait, how did he pull him out? How did he get there so fast? Now that he actually thought about it, the only way he could have done that is if. Izuku turned around, giving a tired sigh. He stuck up a thumb towards Kaken, and said receiver yelled a few obscenities, before scurrying off the other way. Izuku turned back, smiling at the 2 newest signatures he'd gotten. Mount Lady had refused his request, confusing him greatly. She was acting like he had disgraced her family's honor or something. He shrugged before taking a step forward. And having the sheet scared out of him as a recognizable bulk shot out in front of him. Young Midoriya. Izuku let out a startled scream, to which All Might began to laugh. Before he poofed, leaving in his place a skinny, skeletal man. Izuku would proceed to freak out. Whoa, wait, Toshinori thought he could hold out longer. He proved himself wrong. He stuck out his arms, grabbing onto Izuku's shoulders. He proceeded to freak out even more. Toshinori sighed. Why, you're a fake. You have to be. Young Midoriya. All Might caught Izuku's attention, and Toshinori sighed. He let go, stepping back. I know. I'm not. But I'm deflated, I guess. But I am All Might. Toshinori would proceed to explain everything. Well, not everything. Just the important bits. Like how 6 years ago he suffered an injury resulting in half his respiratory system being destroyed and his stomach being completely gone. Izuku had to actually sit down for a good moment to take all this in. Now, with that out of the way, he could get to the important part. Now, that's not why I came here. Izuku blinked, before looking at Toshinori, and nodding. I saw you, young Midoriya. I saw how you ran out to the sludge villain, to save someone. Yeah, I know it was ST. That's why I think you're the perfect candidate to receive my power. Izuku was in the middle of standing up when Toshinori had said that. His heart stopped. His blood froze. His eyes went wide. His entire being froze. He processed the words, analyzing them, before standing up completely, looking to Toshinori in shock and confusion. Receive your power? Toshinori pinched his nose, before holding out his hand. A ball of energy permeated from it, along with bits of various colors, blue, yellow, red, etc. My quirk is one that was handed down to me, a power made by the intertwining of the cries for help and the hearts of the brave, Toshinori began, Izuku's eyes widening even more, and I've been needing a successor for quite some time, young Midoriya. And you are the best candidate. Will you accept my power? It was immediate. Izuku knew what he had to answer. He knew exactly what he wanted to say. Yes, he stated, no waver or doubt in his voice. Toshinori chuckled, before returning to a serious expression. Meet with me at Dagoba Beach at 5 a.m. tomorrow. We start your training then. Izuku excessively nodded, grateful beyond belief, before Toshinori transformed into his muscular form and jumped away. Izuku was left speechless. He eventually made his way back home, slower than usual. When he opened up the door, Inko was worriedly crying at it, pulling Izuku into a hug. Where were you? What happened to your clothes? Izuku breathed a sigh of relief. Oh, thank God. She didn't know. He laughed awkwardly. Oh, I just got caught in the crossfire of a fight, that's all. Seeing Inko about to tear up more, Izuku sighed. I'm fine. I'm okay. I know. I was just so worried. Inko had been worried for her son for years, now. Ever since he was deemed quirkless. Even when he proved that was clearly wrong, she couldn't help but worry. She literally gained weight because of how stressed she was. Izuku sighed, leaning down and giving his mother a kiss on the forehead, before standing straight again. It's okay, Mom. Really, I'm okay. Inko looked up at her son for a few moments, before slowly nodding her head. Okay. The rest of the night was normal. Well, except for one part. Izuku was excited like he'd never felt before. He pumped a fist into the air, laughing as he did so. Oh, he couldn't wait for tomorrow morning. He wished the morning came later. He was having a hard time staying awake. He was used to getting up early, but getting up any earlier apparently was not in his system. He stood on the sands of Dagoba, the trash-filled beach, surrounded by a dome of said trash from years and years of people neglecting to take care of the beach. He tiredly turned to All Might, who looked rather amused at the exhausted teenager. All Might? Yes, young Midoriya? What are we doing out here? All Might coughed into his hand, realizing the boy had been waiting on him to provide answers. A great start for a teaching career. As much as being a hero means you get paid, originally, it was something different. Izuku's eyes brightened up just a bit more. This entire situation was amazing, a dream. He was learning from All Might. Who wouldn't get excited from that? While it's still voluntary, that's all it used to be. Good men and women, taking on the forces of evil for the betterment of humanity. Izuku finally caught onto what All Might was saying. So, cleaning this beach is a lesson? A lesson, and your first act as a hero. Hero in training? I don't know, one of those two. Izuku nodded, understanding. However, All Might continued, shattering that understanding young Midoriya had come to. It was also going to be training to make you into a proper vessel. But it seems like you've already done that, young Midoriya. All Might would gesture towards Midoriya's everything. Izuku hadn't really ever paid attention to his own physique. Izuku looked down, finally realizing that he actually had a well-built one. So I doubt training without one for all would do much, All Might continued, and Izuku could literally feel his eyes shimmer with hope. You've already proven yourself, young Midoriya, and as such. All Might plucked a piece of his hair from his head, Izuku's eyes becoming bigger and bigger by the millisecond. All Might moved the hair out to young Midoriya. Eat this. Izuku felt everything crash for him. His understanding. His enthusiasm. His happiness. All replaced by one big, annoying feeling. Confusion. What? All Might quickly realized how he hadn't explained how you get the power of one for all. He was going to need to pick up a book on teaching. In order to obtain the power of one for all, you must consume something that had my DNA. Hair is the least disgusting option. All Might explained, Izuku giving an oh. Well, that'd make sense. The most sense, that is, seeing as there's no other reasonable way for it to be passed on. Actually no, could a quirk be passed on through will? Can all quirks be passed on through DNA? Izuku fell into a muttering mess, head facing downwards. All Might's sweat dropped, and placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Young Midoriya, you can mutter later. When you're alone. It's quite frightening, to be honest. It was true. With how quickly and quietly he did it, it was amazing anyone could understand him. Izuku looked up at All Might, and placed a hand in the back of his head. He chuckled uneasily, not meaning to do that. All Might sighed, pushing the hair forward. Young Midoriya, please just eat the hair. It's becoming weird. Izuku's eyes widened, and he muttered apologies. He grabbed the hair and brought it close to him. For a few moments, he looked at it. His future. He closed his eyes and smiled. Thank you, All Might. With that, he put the hair in his mouth and swallowed. A few seconds went by, and he raised an eyebrow. I don't feel anything. Then it hit him like a truck on steroids. He no longer saw All Might. He saw a skeleton, an organ system. He saw right through the trash that was on the beach. He closed his eyes, and he could still see it all. He heard everything. Every noise. Every scream. Every car. Every laugh. Everything. There was one thing Izuku couldn't hear over the noise, though. His own screaming. All Might took several steps forward, and grabbed the collapsing boy by his shoulders. Young Midoriya? This hasn't happened before. Nana didn't have it happen. He didn't have it happen. Why was young Midoriya having it happen? He sounded like he was in agonizing pain. Izuku didn't understand. He could see through his eyelids. He could see through the world. He wanted this. Izuku's consciousness faded as he passed out, the strain of what had happened being too much for him to bear. He actually heard what All Might said before he passed out, though. Hang in there, young Midoriya. Then it all went black. Izuku woke up. He thought. He couldn't hear anything. He looked around, and realized he was in what looked like a void. He blinked once. Then again. And again. And again. Before slapping a hand to his face. Oh, good going, Izuku. You're dead now. Why does the universe hate me? It doesn't hate you, otherwise you wouldn't be here, a voice from behind called out. Izuku whipped himself around, not expecting any kind of response. He saw a woman. A tall woman with black hair, a mostly black costume, and a white cape. Around her waist was a smaller red cape. Her boots and gloves were yellow, and her physique was a built one. Who are you? Are you Death? Is Death a girl? Oh no, I didn't get to say goodbye to my mom or my friend. He was interrupted by the woman's laughter. Aha, snort ha. She wiped a small tear from her eye. Apparently, Death had a sense of humor. One that confused the already frightened boy. Seeing his panic not calm down, she sighed, putting her hands on her hips. Usually, the previous users and the current user don't meet until later, but you've gone ahead and thrown that rule away, somehow. Previo. It clicked. Izuku's eyes widened and his mouth opened, a gasp coming out of his mouth. There we go. I was worried we fried your brain. I'm Nana, the 7th user. Izuku looked down and felt dumb. He felt really dumb. How did he not see it? He actually had no way of knowing, but he felt like he should have. Wow, Toshi wasn't kidding. You can mutter up a storm. Izuku looked back up, smacking a hand to his mouth, saying a sorry as an embarrassed blush came across his face. Nana laughed again. Don't worry about it. She suddenly looked to the side, giving a nod. Well, our time is done. See you later, Izuku. Izuku didn't know what she meant. What did she mean later? He couldn't get an answer as she faded from view. The void lifted as Izuku actually opened his eyes, spotting a worrying Toshinori and an elderly woman smacking him on the head with a stick. You shouldn't have been too careless, Yagi. Now look at the boy, he's awake. Toshinori appeared at Izuku's side in the blink of an eye, a relieved look washing over his face. Young Midoriya, are you okay? Are you who? I'm fine, Izuku said, before slowly moving his hands up to his ears. Everything was back to normal. He didn't. What happened? All Might, what happened while I was? Whatever this is. You passed out, young Midoriya. I was worried that the power of one for all had been too much for you. So I you were crying, heroically called for Recovery Girl's assistance. You are currently in the UA. Izuku's eyes widened as he shot up, nearly leaping out of bed altogether. You're fine, Recovery Girl filled in. It seems that you just passed out. From the way Toshinori puts it, though, you were in agony. Happened? Izuku blinked, before giving a nervous look. He began to try and explain. When I ate the hair, it was calm for a few moments, then I saw through everything. I saw All Might's skeleton and organs and I could hear everything. Like, everything. Toshinori's eyes widened as Izuku spoke, wider and wider. He was expecting that the power felt overwhelming, not that he discovered 2 new quirks. Young Midoriya, are you telling me you unlocked 2 new quirks? Izuku looked at All Might for a bit, before nodding. Yeah, I think I did, All Might. It took a while for Recovery Girl to let him go. He was told how she couldn't even draw blood until he allowed her to by relaxing his arm as much as possible, and it was a struggle even then. Izuku wondered why he had awoken 2 new quirks after eating the hair. Especially ones that were so different from one another. He'd have to work on those later. He tried to reactivate them, but they only came back in the smallest bits possible. The only thing Izuku can see through right now is his eyelids. Hearing, however, let him hear every movement through the entire building. It was weird. Eventually, Toshinori and Izuku made their way outside of UA. The sun was starting to set, meaning he'd been out for several hours at least. Toshinori looked at Izuku and sighed. Training starts tomorrow. Just don't freak on me like you did today. Don't worry, All Might. I don't think I can even if I wanted to. Toshinori raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I think I was subjected to the full power of those quirks. Right now, the only thing I can actually see through is my eyelids. Hearing, though, is substantially improved. That's odd, isn't it? I just ate a piece of hair and gained the power of the number 1 hero. Fair enough. They walked and walked, talking about the training and whatnot. How Izuku would have to handle a lot of training by himself so that All Might could continue his hero work. Eventually, they reached Izuku's house, and Toshinori parted from Izuku. As he walked away, he could feel the rush of water that came from the door being opened, along with the worried shouting of what he assumed to be Izuku's mother. He smiled, closing his eyes at that. She obviously cared. That was good. Toshinori can't really remember having a mother. He only remembered the orphanage he was in. The only mother figure he had. Toshinori stopped that thought in his tracks. Years later, and it still hurt. It hurt too much. Toshinori ignored the watering of his eyes and looked towards the house Izuku entered. He was something else. Toshinori didn't know why, but he exuded the feeling of hope. He exuded the feeling of good. He smirked as he knew he made the right choice. He knew that this kid, Izuku Midoriya, was going to become the greatest hero of all time. Maybe not today, maybe not next week or the years following that. But eventually. He just knew. Toshinori turned around and walked away, knowing that the power of one for all was in safe hands. The next morning was the start of Izuku's training. He began to quickly clear Dagoba Beach, to a speed not even All Might expected. Izuku actually surprised himself with the speed of which he was doing it. Occasionally, he'd find something nice, like a piece of merchandise that wasn't too badly damaged. Of course, when he took these home, he never told his mom where he got them from. It was another average morning when a wrench hit him in the head. "You!" Izuku spun around, only to come face to face with a pink-haired girl with odd eyes. She was wearing a mechanic outfit. Izuku realized just how close she was, and felt his face get hot, backing away. However, the pinkette seemed to not care, grabbing him by the collar of his tank top and pulling him back. "You!" The stranger repeated herself. "Me? You're the reason why I'm running out of resources for my babies. I'm sore. Wait, what?" The pinkette squinted at him, backing away a small bit. Izuku thanked the god that decided it liked him for doing that. His face was feeling way too hot. "My babies," the pinkette would say, pulling out. Was that a grappling hook? Why, wow. It all made sense now. "I'm taking your resources." Izuku gave a nervous laugh and rubbed the back of his head. The pinkette stopped squinting and put a hand on her hip. Izuku did not feel any tension ease. Well, I'm sorry, but I need to clean this beach." "Why this beach? Because it's the dirtiest? You're literally scavenging from here." The pinkette looked on in thought for a moment, before sighing. She put her hands on her hips and smiled. Izuku for some reason felt very intimidated by the smile. "Okay, but on one condition. We weren't making a duh. I get all the scraps so I can make more babies." Izuku blinked. Maybe this wasn't going to be as bad as he thought it was. "Yeah, I can agree to that." After a moment of silence, the pinkette stuck her hand out. "I'm Hatsum, and you just became my favorite client." Izuku walked forward and cautiously accepted the handshake before realizing what she had said. "Client? But in exchange for letting me make more babies, you can ask for some. I can make anything." She pulled her hand back and placed it on her hip again. Izuku sighed. Well, he didn't have room to complain. This could be good in the long run. His new support was very talkative and very excited to show off her babies. Great, he hadn't even entered the hero course and he had already chosen his support. Or the support chose him. One of those two things happened and Izuku believed it to be the latter. After they exchanged numbers and he got a location to dump the material off, Izuku got right back to work. Works would go by, Hatsum showing up occasionally to show her latest baby. They had a 50-50 chance of either working exactly as intended or blowing up in her face. She never faltered. He once asked why she was never upset, and she told him that it was because failure always led to success. Izuku laughed at that one. One morning, the beach was finally cleared. Tashinori walked up and was taken aback before hearing a victorious yell. He looked to his right, seeing young Midoriya on a pile of garbage, yelling victoriously. "Oh my!" Tashinori flexed and smiled, becoming the #1 hero everyone loved. Goodness! All Might stood proud, before rushing to where Izuku had landed. His physique hadn't changed much, other than becoming much more defined. This kid was built. "I did it!" Izuku cheered, All Might giving a hearty laugh and patting his apprentice on the back. "You did well, young Midoriya. You even finished 4 months before the test to get into UA." Izuku felt happy. Extremely happy. He had done it. He did it. No one else. Though, people did occasionally walk by, and he swore one even took a picture of him at work, grabbing a boat. Yes, a boat. And throwing it into the pile he had for Hatsum's salvage yard. Every day he came back, the yard was empty, Hatsum standing there with an innocent smile. Izuku may be powerful, but Hatsum scared him more than anything. "Hiya. Now I can train without having to worry about throwing trash into the ocean," Izuku joked, to which All Might laughed. Indeed, young Midoriya. All Might wasn't showing it, not fully, but he was beaming. He was so proud of young Midoriya. He had chosen a good successor. Nana would be proud. "Now, I'm going to go on my morning run." All Might nodded and the young boy was off. Dear Lord, he was a fast one. All Might let out a small chuckle and shook his head, before getting into a leaping position. He looked over to Izuku in the distance one last time, before leaping towards the city. About a week had passed. Midoriya yawned as he stretched, touching his toes. He stood back up, cracking his knuckles, before getting into a running position. 3, 2, 1 and he was off. Izuku loved the feeling of freedom he got from this. It was great. What wasn't great was accidentally running into someone. With a yelp of surprise from both him and the person he ran into, they tumbled down into the beach. Izuku ended up shifting himself so he took the fall and hit the ground, sliding due to the speed he hit then at. Izuku closed his eyes, and after landing he opened them. He felt a mass on his chest and stomach. He looked down and came face to face with a girl. A beautiful girl. On top of him. Izuku's face became a crimson, as did the girl's, and they both scrambled up, Izuku muttering apologies and making sure she was all right. The young lady had black hair, it being in a ponytail. Her skin was a pale tone, and her bust was rather large. Izuku, being the kind young man he was, noticed, but didn't focus on that. Or tried not to. Hey, are you okay? Yes, I'm all right. Are you okay? Why are you asking me? I ran into you. But you took the brunt of the fall. Well, I couldn't let you take the fall, it would have hurt like hell. It didn't hurt him. His skin was practically invulnerable to anything that he's tested it against so far, much to the horror of his mother. After a few awkward moments, and coming to an understanding, the two sat in an awkward silence. At least until the girl spoke. I'm Momo Yaoyorozu, it's nice to make your acquaintance, she would finish by putting her hand out awkwardly. Izuku took her hand and shook it, before taking his hand back and using it to scratch that back of his head. I'm Izuku Midoriya. I'm so sorry for the— No, you don't have to, Oppo. But I ran into you. Not on purpose. Didn't she got him there? Izuku awkwardly grabbed his other arm, and quickly realized that he was in fact shirtless. In front of a girl. A beautiful girl. Izuku was going to transcend all known colors with how red his face got. Oh. What brings you here? Oh, I just moved here recently. I decided to get to know the area. I decided to visit the beach, since I heard that it was recently cleaned. Apparently one person did it too, which is an amazing achievement. Izuku laughed at that bit, before seeing the look Yaoyorozu sent his way. Oh yeah. I bet it took a lot of hard work too. No kidding, all the pictures of this beach showed a trash heap and now it's this. The two would continue to talk, Izuku doing his best to keep his eyes on her face and not her. Other features. He may be a respectful teenager, but he was still exactly that. The teenager. Yaoyorozu on the other hand didn't try as hard. That wasn't to say that she didn't like what she saw. No, Yaoyorozu liked what she saw quite a bit, she just did a good job of keeping herself under control. Eventually, Izuku asked the question he had been holding on to since she said she moved here. Why'd you move here? Oh. It was so that I could get into UA. Oh, so you're taking the test too? I got in already, through recommendations. Izuku felt his mouth fall agape. She got in through recommendations? What was her quirk? It had to be powerful to get in through recommendations. What's your quirk? Izuku asked, the quirk nerd inside of him eager to find out. I can create things, Yaoyorozu answered, creating a matryoshka doll as an example. After a few moments of silence, Yaoyorozu looked back at Izuku to see him staring in amazement. She felt her face become hot. I know it's not. That's awesome. Yaoyorozu blinked in surprise. Come again. That's so cool. Is there any limit to what you can create? If there isn't, you could make anything, like gases or fictional chemical compounds or alloys, you could anything. Yaoyorozu's face became even hotter as she looked down, holding the matryoshka doll. Well, I can't create anything living. I don't know about alloys and gases though. I'll have to test that out. I can see why you got in through recommendations. Izuku announced, which did not help Yaoyorozu's blush at all. Thank you. After some more talking between the two, mostly about her quirk, Izuku finally began to step away. Well, I should get back to my run. Wanna keep in contact? Yeah, I would, Yaoyorozu agreed. They pulled out their phones and exchanged numbers, before Izuku put his away. He began to walk away, when Yaoyorozu called out to him. Oh, one last thing. Izuku turned around, looking at Yaoyorozu with curious eyes. You can call me Momo. Izuku nodded, smiling as he did so. You can call me Izuku then. After a nod from Momo, and a smile appearing on her face, Izuku turned around and sped off. Izuku only realized what he did when he was far away. He had successfully talked to a girl. He had held a full-on conversation. He would have to celebrate this achievement later. He would finally finish his run, heading home. He had spent the entire day training. After a nice meal with his mother, Inko, who had been rather excited at the fact that Izuku made another friend, he went to his room and sat on his bed. Pulling out his phone, he saw a text from Itsuka, asking him how he was. Itsuka, hey, how was your day? Izuku, my day went well. I made a friend. Itsuka, oh? Izuku, yeah, her name is Momo. She got into UA through recommendation, and she has this awesome quirk. She can create anything as long as it isn't living. On the other side of the screen, Itsuka could feel her nose crinkle. She didn't know why, but that made her feel somewhat uneasy. Itsuka, that's cool. It was cool, she just didn't know why she felt uneasy about it. Izuku, I know. Anyways, I have to head to bed. Good night. Itsuka closed her eyes and sighed. They talked often, but it was always short. Hopefully it wouldn't be like that when they got into UA. That was a surprise she couldn't wait to reveal to Izuku. Back to Izuku's side, he turned off his phone and lay down. He turned onto his back and looked up. Life had been looking up for the teenager, and he was excited. He closed his eyes and drifted into sleep, finding it hard to wait for the next few months to pass by. 2 months. 2 months until the exam started. 2 months until the start of Izuku's hero career. 2 months of training ahead. And Izuku found himself wishing he could do it today. He was excited beyond belief. He was sure he'd do well enough before, but now he was sure he'd pass the exam, both practical and written. It definitely helped when Momo had to take both beforehand because of her recommendation. Though, Izuku studied on his own as best he could, not knowing if the exams for recommended examinees differed from the average examinees. When he wasn't studying or going to school, he was training. When he wasn't training, he was relaxing or socializing. Young Izuku found that Bakugo no longer seemed anywhere near as hostile towards him as he was before. He still spoke in his natural tongue, of course, but there was a certain type of friendliness laced in his wording. Izuku even found his childhood friend apologizing to him sometimes. Now that caused him to physically recoil. However, it seemed this behavior was exclusive to Midoriya, and Midoriya only, as he saw him blow up a locker because the kid angered him. Izuku theorized it had something to do with the sludge villain, which it could have. Unfortunately, he knew that even if he asked him, he would deny it outright. One sunny morning, Izuku headed for the beach, where he intended to train a bit. Get his body used to throwing punches and kicks. The first time he started that, his arms hurt like actual hell. Even with his immense strength, he found it hard to even lift his arm. But it was getting better with time. Another thing to note was how energized he felt in the sun. He hadn't even noticed it before, but he never got sunburnt. So either he had some really good genetics, this was part of his quirk, or this was part of One for All. The topic of One for All, Izuku had began to theorize almost immediately about the power of One for All, especially after he began to train with it a bit. It put a heavy strain on Izuku's body, one he wasn't familiar with. His bones felt like they were going to snap, his arms explode. But the sheer power was incredible. Strength beyond measure. Even All Might was impressed when Izuku demonstrated by throwing a punch out to sea, causing enormous waves that clashed into each other, creating a very large ripple effect. It quickly went from awe to a game of get to high ground. It also turned into a game of how to hide his bloodied arm from his mother. About a month from the exam, Izuku started hearing a pinging noise. It wasn't loud, and it didn't hurt his ears, but it seemed he was the only one to hear it. Hey, All Might? Izuku called, All Might turning to face his protege, his smile never faltering for a moment. Yes, young Midoriya? Izuku scratched the back of his head, another ping sounding off. It sounded like it was coming from the north, but he couldn't place exactly where in the north. Do you hear a weird pinging noise? Like it's coming from the north. All Might continued looking at his protege, before his brow furrowed a bit in confusion. Just from that reaction, Izuku knew the coming answer. No, young Midoriya, I don't think I do. Why? Izuku's nervous habit kicked in, him laughing nervously and clasping his hands together. And no reason. Jay just heard this rumor about it, that's all, Izuku lied, hoping his lie would work. At the sight of All Might relaxing, he knew it did in fact work. After that, Izuku kept the pinging noise to himself, not wanting to worry anyone. During the piece before the exam, Izuku chat with his friends. Momo Itsuka. Hatsum sometimes? Hatsum normally texted him about her latest baby. After a near catastrophe with her last baby, she wasn't allowed to come to the beach anymore. Hatsum understood, but she would still share the details of her inventions with Izuku. He didn't mind, not at all. And this was his routine until Izuku woke up to his alarm, jolting out of bed. It was the day of the exam. He got out of bed, slipping into his uniform and exiting his bedroom. Taking a turn and going down the hall, he found himself in the kitchen. His mother was at the table, eating a small breakfast. The younger Midoriya grabbed a box of cereal and a bowl, and filled it up before grabbing the milk carton in the fridge and pouring some in. He sat down after putting both the milk and cereal away, and grabbing a spoon. He quickly began to eat, much to his mother's amusement. If you aren't careful, you might choke, the tired mother said to her energetic son. He responded with a nod of acknowledgement, before proceeding to not slow down. She chuckled lightly at his antics. The younger Midoriya finished in seconds. He spotted the clock, and his eyes widened, scrambling out of his chair. He got out successfully, before running towards the door, grabbing his backpack and barely slipping on his shoes. I love you, Mom, bye. Izuku called out over the chaos that was his exit. The mother called back to him, telling him to be safe and be careful, and then the front door opened and shut, the younger Midoriya slipping out the door. Izuku began sprinting to the campus of UA, the school which both exams took place. As he casually ran beside cars and passed entire buildings in seconds, he was telling himself to keep calm. He couldn't believe the day had finally come, the day he had been looking forward to since he was a kid. To say he was barely restraining himself from freaking out was an understatement. Within minutes, he managed to get there. He slowed down completely, looking in awe at the gate of UA. He slowly walked in walking down the path towards the test location. He stood proud and he stood tall and move Deku. Izuku turned around and saw Kaken approaching. He felt the corner of lip twitch upwards, taking a step back. Morning, Kaken. Let's do our best. Kaken walked past him, barely acknowledging him, but he stopped a few feet in front of Izuku, turning his head slightly. Don't die, dumbass. Please. With that, he continued his walk towards the building they were guided to. Izuku nodded, not planning to do so. Besides, there's no way that the UA would actually endanger the students, right? Young Midoriya stuffed that thought down. He took a step forward, a step towards his foot dash. And he tripped. On his own foot. Midoriya felt all of his self-belief fade, the end drawing near. His eyes focused on the ground as the small smile he had refused to leave. He waited for it, the drop, but it never came. He turned his head to the side, seeing a girl there. She was much shorter than Izuku, and had a round face with what seemed to be 2 permanent blush marks on her cheeks. Her hair and eyes were the same brown color. She gave a smile, and Izuku felt his heart thump harder than usual. Sorry for using my quirk without asking, I figured it's bad luck to fall before the exam. Izuku's smile turned real, that was nice. And then she put him upright, Izuku's heart stopping and starting simultaneously, and pressed her hands together, Izuku dropping onto the ground. Izuku's cheeks were red, but she either didn't notice or care. Let's do our best. See ya. And just like that, she continued walking. Izuku didn't know what it was, but he found himself unable to speak. He's talked to girls before, why was it hard to say something now? Of course, there was always an awkward pause or beginning for Hayo. By the time he regained his ability to speak, she was gone. As soon as he saw he again, he needed to thank her for letting him not faceplant into the ground. It was only a few seconds until he heard someone call out his name, which startled the hell out of the boy. Izuku! He turned around towards the source of his name, his eyes wide and his eyebrows confused on if they should furrow or raise. He ended up raising one eyebrow. What he saw was someone he hadn't seen in a while. Itsuka Kendo. His smile was almost immediate, both surprised and happy to see his second childhood friend of all people come running up, only to slow down and stop in front of him. The girl, while still shorter than Izuku as most people were, was taller than the girl who'd saved him moments earlier. She had orange hair and teal eyes, along with being rather slim. Izuku nervously chuckled at the small distance between them and took a step back. Itsuka either didn't notice or understood. Itsuka? What are you doing here? I'm here for the exam, Izuku. I thought that would have been obvious. Oh, well that's great. I hope you do well then. Izuku didn't really know what to say, other than how happy he was that she was here. Before they could actually catch up, an announcement went off warning them of the breakdown about to start. Oh well, it was nice seeing you, Izu. Itsuka would say as she began to run into the building. Izuku began to speed walk in, yelling a bye in response. Well, he knew at least 2 people getting in, so he wouldn't be alone at least. As Izuku moved into the building, he found where he'd be sitting and moved there. And luck would have it. He was sitting next to Kaken. The blonde didn't say anything as Izuku sat down next to him, only turning his head away slightly. That was enough for him to know that he had at least noticed him. Izuku decided to close his eyes and lean back, listening to the murmuring and talking of the people. What happened still made Izuku's ears bleed just thinking about it. It went from quiet to a thunderous boom of sound, that thunderous boom being a person. Izuku jolted forward, accidentally slamming his head into the desk, hissing as he pulled back. He wasn't sure if he should grab his ears or put a hand on his forehead. Either way, they both hurt. He heard Kaken barely manage to hold down a snort, his eyes turned towards Izuku with a newfound humor. Now that the ringing from the sudden noise was going away, Izuku could actually start listening to the voice, which he now knew belonged to Present Mike. Present Mike had an interesting haircut. It was combed up as far as it would go, spiky at the back and sides. He had glasses and a mustache, and a device around his head that was the directional speaker. Other than that, he had an exaggerated collar on his black jacket and black pants, a red belt, and elbow and shoulder pads. He was probably the most energetic heroes of all time, at least when he was being a hero. Or in his costume. Was he just like this? Izuku didn't have the answers. He began to mutter to himself, the noise droning on and on. Kaken was amused. Some participants didn't care. One in particular was annoyed. Said annoyed examinee raised his hand after Present Mike was done. Excuse me, Present Mike sir? He stood tall. Not as tall as Izuku, but almost. He had glasses and a good build. He held up his exam prep paper and pointed to it. You mentioned 3 villains, but this sheet clearly states that there are 4 types. If this is an error, this is a serious oversight, especially for a school as prestigious as UA. The student then turned towards Izuku, a steely glint in his eye. Can you stop muttering? It's distracting and honestly frightening. Izuku sunk into his seat as some kids laughed, Kaken letting out a deep, quiet growl. Izuku turned to Kaken, his brows raising just a bit. Why was he growling? Was it because the student had called him out? He wasn't sure. Thanks for bringing that up, Examinee 7111. The first 3 give you points, 1-pointer, 2-pointer, 3-pointer. Well, the 4th one is a 0-pointer. It's more of an obstacle than anything. And if you do manage to take it down, IT reduces your score to 0. So avoid it at all costs. Good luck. Present Mike added mentally. After that, all that was left to do was report to where they were supposed to go. Kaken left Midoriya for his station. The written test was nothing. He'd aced it even. He really had to thank Momo for her help on that later. He wondered how she was doing, actually. Not the time. Now he was standing just outside a group of what he could only assume was 50 or so examinees. He saw a pink-skinned girl and a red boy excitedly chatting, and he looked around too. See, a blonde kid staring at him with this odd smile. Izuku felt intimidated by the smile. Something was wrong, there had to be something wrong. The angle, the smile itself, the eyes. Izuku tore his gaze away from the blonde, unable to continue trying to examine him. Then he saw the same girl from earlier. Oh yeah. He needed to thank her. He began to walk towards her, confident in how he was going to do this. All he needed to do and there's a hand in his shoulder. He turned around and saw the glasses-wearing boy from before, now glaring intently at him. Izuku stared back. Oh boy. He looked from Izuku to the girl from before, speaking with confidence and seriousness. That girl appears to be trying to focus. He turned his gaze back to Izuku, who was keeping as straight a face as possible. What are you doing here? Are you taking the entrance exam to interfere with everyone else? No, I was. Izuku fell into a rambling mess, before sighing, hearing the other students begin to talk about him. Isn't that the guy who tripped? What's he doing here? One less rival at least. Izuku sighed, closing his eyes for a moment. They snapped open, and he looked at the student with a newfound confidence. No. I was going to thank her for not letting me trip. The student seemed to lose his own confidence for a split second, his face falling. Okay, start. And just like that, Izuku was gone. The students all looked at the boy, who had run into the makeshift city. The other examinees looked at the source of the voice, Present Mike, in confusion and surprise. Present Mike smiled at the fact that at least one of them listened. There are no countdowns to fights. Run. And with that, the other examinees made their way into the makeshift city. Already, they saw the path of absolute devastation. Well, the robots. There were enough still roaming, though, and they began to go after those. In just 3 minutes, Izuku Midoriya had racked up at least 50 points now. He was impressed by others' abilities though and their skills. He saw one kid shoot a laser from his belly, and the rather intimidating boy seemed to have. Were those rockets in his calves? Those were. Izuku would make a page on that later. In a room full of monitors sat the heroes that would be teaching the students. One hero, a hero called the R-rated hero, stood with her arms crossed, looking at the screens, a smirk coming onto her face. Midnight spoke, her smirk not leaving her face. This year's batch looks exciting, wouldn't you say, Aizawa? The mentioned teacher grumbled in response, his tired eyes not leaving the screen for a second. It was true, many of them did look promising. He just hoped he didn't end up with any glass cannons. Midnight seemed to take his response as a confirmation, her smirk growing even bigger. Aizawa didn't care. Toshinori watched, staying silent, but a smile was on his face as he watched his protege wipe the floor with the robots. He was doing it with such speed and carefulness, it was amazing. Of course, other students were doing well too, and this did not escape his attention. A certain explosive blonde caught his eye, his combat instincts being on point. He then caught a red glint in the room, looking over. His eyes widened before calming down as he realized what it was. A smaller being, an unknown animal of some kind with intelligence that exceeded that of a normal human, stood there, looking at the rest of them with a smile on his face. Let's really test them now, shall we? Toshinori suddenly felt simultaneously excited and worried. Young Midoriya had been wiping the floor with the robots, racking up an incredible 78 points. He had found himself in a large grouping when the rumbling started. Only then did he notice the looming shape that looked down at them. Izuku's eyes widened, someone yelling out the same thing he thought. That's the 0-pointer? Holy sheet, run. We can't beat that thing. Izuku himself was about to avoid it when he heard a yelp of pain. He froze, recognizing the voice. He turned around, and his fears had been confirmed. The nice girl who had saved him before was trapped underneath some rubble, and the 0-pointer was about to crush her. The world froze in that moment as it felt a power it hadn't truly felt before. Izuku's body sparked with red and green energy, his eyes turning red as he was suddenly gone in the blink of an eye, a blur barely taking his place as he disappeared. The boy with glasses from before stopped running when he saw that. He spun around, questioning where he went when he saw it, something he hadn't expected at all. Yurika was not having a pleasant day. It started off nice, her saving a rather nice, built guy from falling on his first day. Then the exam came up. She did well on the written one, but the physical one? It had taken a toll on her. She felt like she was going to vomit, and it didn't help when she tried running. She barely realized that she was pinned. She let out a yelp of pain when she did realize it, focusing on getting free when she realized she was about to get crushed. She closed her eyes, tears welling up as she believed it to be the end. And she waited. And waited. And she waited. Then she heard the hissing of metal refusing to give way, and she opened her eyes, seeing who she hadn't expected to see be her savior. Or, at least, she thought it was him. The boy from earlier was holding the titanic weight up, his teeth bared, his eyes glowing a deep red, and lightning sparking from his body. He began to push up, which surprised the brunette as he actually started winning against the titanic robot. Izuku began to push everything he had, his arms becoming red quickly and bleeding, and he began to use one for all, and he could feel another power coming into play. His own. He pushed up, finally, letting out a roar of victory as he threw the foot to the side, causing the robot to fall to its left, destroying a building in the process. He looked down towards the girl, her expression one of complete awe. He had bought them time. He grabbed the piece of rubble that kept her down and managed to throw it like a piece of paper, picking her up and running to safety, putting her down next to the boy with glasses. He didn't waste any time, running back towards the robot, which was already standing up again. He needed to finish this now. Izuku's instincts, ones he didn't even know he had, kicked in and he found himself flying? Shooting towards the robot. Seconds later, he found himself outside the robot's head. Robot freezing in place before outright blowing up. Izuku floated, looking at his hands. He could fly? He could fly. And then the noise hit him. He needed to get down. He began to feel lightheaded as the noise of everything played endlessly in his ears, him slowly floating to the ground before falling to his knees, his arms bloodied, but not broken. He fell forward, his arms slamming forward to catch himself. He breathed rhythmically as the noise faded, just in time for one last message to be heard. Time's up. Izuku froze again, this time for an entirely different reason. He failed. He'd lost all of his points. But deep down, he knew he'd do it again. He couldn't let someone get hurt if he could reach them. He could never do that. He slammed his fist into the concrete, cracking it as tears welled up in his eyes. The girl from before was now standing up, his hands over her mouth. He'd saved her and he'd paid the price for it. But Izuku knew he'd do it again. The boy in glasses began to think. He realized all too late. He'd misjudged the other boy. He may have muttered, he may have almost broken the girl's concentration, but when it came down to it he'd risk everything he had to save someone. That took bravery the likes of which he found impressive and respectable. Soon after that, Recovery Girl made her rounds. Izuku's arms healed quickly, both due to the sun and her ability to speed up their healing process. He didn't even realize his track suit was mostly ruined. The top part, anyway. The pants were still in good condition. Izuku didn't wait for anyone. Izuku just headed home. He really needed to go home. When the boy got home, he'd met his mother's hopeful gaze, but shot it down with an expressionless, dead face. He barely ate dinner that night, more so marveling at the neat details that made a fish. Well, a fish. Later that night he lay in bed, seeing that he got several texts. Some from Itsuka and Momo. Itsuka, hey, where were you after the exam? I couldn't find you. Izuku paused for a moment, barely containing the waterworks that was his indescribable sadness. Izuku, I didn't get in. Itsuka, what? Izuku, I destroyed a 0-pointer and lost all of my points. Itsuka, oh, maybe it was a joke? Izuku, it wasn't. Itsuka, oh, I'm sorry Izu. Izuku, it's fine. Just need some time is all. Izuku then switched to Momo's ecstatic message, wincing as he realized what he was going to have to tell her. Momo, Izuku, how did you do on the exam? Did the studying help? Izuku, the studying did help, all of it helped. But I still didn't get in. Momo, what? Izuku, I took down a 0-pointer. It reduces your points to 0. Momo, why'd you take it down? Izuku, to save someone. Momo. Izuku, Momo? Izuku, hello? Momo put a hand on her face, dragging it down, before setting it down entirely. As smart as Izuku is, he can be a real idiot. An idiot she would do almost anything for, but an idiot nonetheless. Momo. Izuku, as smart as you are, you can be really, really dumb. Izuku. What? Izuku was taken aback, his tears stopping entirely out of surprise. On the other side, Momo giggled at his confusion. Momo, why would a hero course turn down a student who saved someone knowing they'd lose all their points? Izuku blinked slowly. Then he did it again. And he only had one word to say. Izuku. Momo. Izuku, you passed. I just know you did. Izuku felt the tears start up again, but this time from relief rather than grief. She was right. Why didn't he think of that? Oh crap, he'd already texted All Might telling him about how he failed. He quickly attempted to amend that. After that, he went back to Momo and gave a smile. She couldn't see it, of course, but he made sure she knew he was thankful for the belief and support. Izuku, thank you. The younger Midoriya would then experience his body begging for sleep, and he provided, passing out soon after. The day had been an emotional roller coaster. The next day, he made his way towards Dagoba Beach. More so to just sit around and think. He brought his notebook as well, Hero Journal #. He began to make an updated entry for himself, noting the abilities he had. So far, he knew he had incredible hearing and X-ray vision. He hasn't experimented with his vision yet, other than discovering that he did in fact have heat vision, but he has done so with his hearing. He can limit the distance that he hears things, or block out certain noises and people. He just needed to train to do that on a grand scale. Along with those, he had flight. He wasn't sure how he unlocked that, but he knew he had it before one for all. Then there was the fact that he felt energized in the sun, so he marked that down just in case. Izuku spent several hours working on that, his skin never once changing red to signify sunburn. After that, he lay down in the sun, closing his eyes for a good few moments. After resting for a bit, he got back up, grabbing his notebook and running back home. Dashing inside, he put the Hero Journal number 13 away. This would be a reoccurring theme for the week. He'd go to the beach, add new quirks, update hero profiles, and then come back and hanging out at home. He would hang out with his mom, telling her his theories on his powers, leaving out the one for all bit. If he wasn't doing that, he was talking to his friends. Kendo was more than relieved when he told her about Momo's theory. Hatsum was just relieved that her favorite client, and friend, she said it at least once, was probably going to UA. Finally, a week had passed. And a letter had arrived. Izuku had been sitting on the couch, watching the news when his mother skid into the doorways. He looked at her with his eyebrows raised, his pupils small. He hadn't been expecting that at all. Izuku. It's here. She held out an envelope. Izuku's eyes widened at the red stamp on it. No way. His smile appeared, shooting off of the couch and rocketing over to his mom. He picked her up, laughing. He was both worried and excited, but if Momo was right, he had absolutely nothing to worry about. He trusted her. Izuku ran to his room, closing the door. He put the envelope on his desk and ripped it open. His mother was worriedly pacing outside his door, ready to comfort her son to the best of her abilities. A small disc fell out of the envelope, landing on his desk and spinning for a moment before settling. As soon as it did, it lit up a brilliant blue, a hologram being projected upwards. I am here as a projection. Izuku did a double take. All Might? Wasn't this from the UA? Was All Might doing here? Many questions ran out of Izuku's head, unknowingly out of his mouth too. I had to do some paperwork, so I didn't find the time to contact you, All Might began, putting his arm on his side and sticking his forearms out. He then put his arms down, before coughing into his hand. I'm sorry. Actually, I come to this town to work at UA. Wait, he's working at UA? Izuku found himself saying in disbelief. Was he going to get him as a teacher? Oh, now Izuku was excited. HM? Wrap it up? But there's so M-. It's going to push everything else back? All Might sighed. Alright. You passed the written exam with flying colors, And your score on the practical exam was phenomenal. A score of 89 villain points is unheard of, even for me. But you took out the 0-pointer, which reduced your points back to 0. Izuku felt his entire world drop, the color of his eyes becoming pinpricks. No. And, if that was all there was to it. Izuku's world kickstarted once more, relief, tears, filling his eyes. I am an entertainer as well as a hero. First, take a look at this video. Izuku froze at the sight of the nice girl coming onto his screen. What was she doing here? Excuse me, She came to negotiate in person after the practical. Negotiate what? Keep watching to find out. All Might resumed the video. Present Mike was now on screen as well. Izuku really had to ask him for his autograph. And find out a way to turn down his volume and his volume alone. He was loud. The person with the curly hair and freckles, do you know who I'm talking about? Muscular tall? Is it possible for me to give him my points? He lost all of his. He saved me. Izuku's heart was playing a game of guess the beat. She really went to do that for him? Please. Izuku stood up, his eyes widening again. She asked again and again. All Might paused the video, his back turned. A reward for your sacrifice, your actions spurred others to act. Izuku nodded. He felt a smile coming onto his face as he let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He looked down, not knowing if he should be relieved, but feeling relieved anyways. The entrance exam was not only graded for villain points. Izuku's head snapped back up. What? All Might resumed the video coming back on. Even if you wanted to, you can't give him any of your points, Present Mike told the girl. He actually sounded really calm, quiet. Maybe it was just a front after all. There's no reason to other. The video was paused once again, All Might coming into the view of the camera, obscuring it completely. How can a hero course reject people who save others and do the right thing? Call that lip service? This JS a job that requires one risking their life and putting lip service into practice. Rescue points. Izuku's eyes widened even more as what was basically a leaderboard came into view. It's the other basic ability we at UA look at. Izuku was in first place, Bakugo in second. He didn't recognize the third placement, but he believed their name to be Eijiro Kirishima. Izuku Midoriya, 89 villain points, 60 rescue points. A grand total of 149 points, a record-shattering number, beating my record by 29 points. Impressive. And then, Achiko Ururika, 45 points. The hologram flickered from the leaderboard, which placed her in fourth place, to the girl from before. So that's her name. Izuku mentally exclaimed. Finally, a name for the face. And a name for her entry. No bad Izuku, later. You both pass. All Might would reach towards Izuku, his smile never faltering. Come, young Midoriya. This is your hero academia. And with that, the hologram froze. Izuku smiled. And then he cried with joy. He opened his door and hugged his mother. She too was crying with joy. Izuku told everyone the news, and they all seemed just as excited as he did. He did it. He got into UA. And apparently, All Might taught there now. Another letter came soon after that, informing all students of the dorm system that was put in place this year after a sudden increase in crimes revolving around younger Quirk users. So not only did he need to get his things ready for school, he needed to be ready to move. And yet, he couldn't find a reason to not be happy. He had done it. He had made it. The start of his heroic career started now. Hello there, folks. Thanks for reading all the way. As you can see, we finally got to the juicy part of our tale, the UA part. If you're confused for the beginning author's note, it came from about 2-3 days ago, so some of your reviews weren't there. Speaking of that, holy crap. I wasn't expecting this much support and positive feedback. Thank you, every single one of you. It means a lot to me. Sorry if the ending seems rushed, or even this author's note. I didn't really know how to end either one, so I'll just end the author's note off with what Izuku is sitting at right now, power-wise. I'm going to give him the basic abilities that Superman is most well known for as a base. Flight, hearing, all that. He won't have supreme control over all of his abilities yet, or have the planet-busting strength of Superman. I don't have a plan for everything yet, but I'm forming one quickly. Oh, and one last thing. If you guys have any suggestions, let me hear. Anyways, back on track now that that is out of the way. Thank you all for reading Chapter 3 of God Mode, and I hope to see you all again soon. Until next time. All Might. Toshinori spun around, his mouth exploding with blood. Midoriya stood there, seeming to be panting from what he could only assume was a full sprint. In the background, 2 other voices were heard. Toshinori's eyes widened. All Might? Where? He indicated to his young pupil, who realized his mistake quickly. Oh, I had the wrong person. Sorry. The 2 other voices sounded off in disappointment, both Izuku and Toshinori visibly loosening up. Toshinori looked down as he breathed a sigh of relief, before looking back up to his young apprentice. He held up a hand, to which Izuku happily clapped his hand against it. A high five, if you will. Congrats on getting accepted. Toshinori said, Izuku nodding with a smile. Thank you. Toshinori turned slightly, keeping his head pointed in Izuku's direction. I wasn't one of the judges, my boy. Some of them at least, know about our connection, just that we know each other. Midoriya nodded his head, a smile splitting his face. Then the most recent update popped into his head, his smile softening just a bit. I'm surprised you're a teacher here. I mean, I guess that's why you'd be around, but it makes sense since your agency is in Roppongi in Tokyo Dash. Stop that. Toshinori interrupted, Izuku freezing in place. Man, he started rambling again, didn't he? The sweat drop going down Toshinori's face was all he needed to see to know it was because he started rambling. Toshinori turned around and took a few steps down the beach. I couldn't tell anyone about it until the school announced it. He turned back around to face Midoriya. I'm glad that I chose to come, young man, because if I hadn't, I fear my search for a successor would have lasted much longer. And even then I may not have found one as worthy as you. Izuku felt the corners of his mouth twitch upwards even more, his eyes glistening with appreciation from the compliment. I guess you could say it all turned out all might. Toshinori finished his sentence by transforming into his muscular form, giving a hearty laugh at his own joke. Izuku laughed at it because it was so bad it was good. Is that All Might? When did he get here? All Might's sweat dropped again as he began to run. Let us go, young Midoriya. Izuku let out a yes sir, and began to run behind him. All Might looked behind him and at his successor, feeling a new warmth in his chest. The proud warmth. He just knew that this kid was going to be one of, if not the greatest hero. He's so cool. Izuku really hoped no one saw the blur of red, white and blue. Not because it was All Might, no. It was because it was Izuku making a mad dash for the UA campus with his All Might merch. Once getting in through the gate he slowed down. Still running but no longer sprinting as he was. Getting to Heights Alliance, the younger Midoriya would set his merch down, opening the front door and then picking it back up and running for his room. Running up a flight of stairs, he came to his door and repeated the process, before sorting and organizing his merch. God forbid All Might ever come into his room. Or discover his merch at all. Izuku looked at a comic book box on the floor in front of his bed. Maybe he could frame those and hang them up, making it seem like he isn't a complete All Might fanboy. He knew that his mom, Bakugo's mom, Bakugo, and All Might knew, but he didn't need anyone else coming to the conclusion. Izuku ran out of his room and immediately ran into someone. He made a mental note to start paying attention to his other senses more often so he doesn't keep doing this. Using his speed, he caught himself with a foot, shooting himself forward as he caught the arm of the other person, pulling them forward so they didn't fall. What Izuku was not thinking about was what would happen after that. Izuku looked down slightly at the person who he had just stopped from falling, and they did the same in return. He saw, in return, a blue eye and a brown eye. Scar tissue was around the blue eye. Izuku wondered how they got that. Then Izuku came to a realization. This was a girl. He immediately took a step back, making a distance in between them, only to feel the temperature of the room drop dramatically. Red hair on the side of the scar, white hair on the side with normal skin. Izuku's hearing perked up as he heard someone take a step forward on his left side. He turned his head, seeing a similar-looking person, only with shorter hair and no scar. He was slightly taller than the girl. Izuku's mind was putting puzzle pieces in place left and right. It clicked. Twins. What were you doing to my sister? The boy ground out, a sudden rise in temperature happening. Then the left side of the boy began to light up with fire, little spurts blasting off of him as he clearly tried to keep it together. Izuku quickly began trying to explain, his face reddening. It's not what it looks like. He stopped me from falling after he accidentally ran into me, the girl interrupted, taking a few steps towards what Izuku assumed was her twin. He wasn't trying anything, Shoto. Calm down. The boy, now known to Midoriya as Shoto, did calm down, the spurts of fire ceasing. In his heterochromic eyes, Izuku could see relief? Did he not? Did he not like his quirk? From what he could gather, he could control fire in its entirety, making it appear from thin air. He'd have to do more research, and by research, he means watching and hoping he gave him more to work on. The boy remained glaring at Izuku as the girl walked over, standing beside him as she turned around. They looked at Izuku as he stood there, awkwardly staring back. A scoff sounded off from behind Midoriya, causing him to spin around. What he saw was a guy with indigo hair that stood up, starring off his head. His eyes had bags under them, and his pupils looked white. That was weird. Maybe it had something to do with his quirk? If I wanted a show, I thought I'd have to go watch it on TV. Thank you 3 for proving me wrong. Izuku could tell that he was joking and coming off as a JRK, but he didn't seem like he was trying to actually be a JRK. Izuku's face, now back to its original color, relaxed. He stood up straight and walked over. If this was one of his dorm mates, that wasn't making him feel like he better watch his every move, he figured he should introduce himself. He stuck out a hand, looking the newcomer in the eyes. Hi, I am Izuku Midoriya. What's your name? Nailed it. The indigo-haired boy raised an eyebrow, his white pupils dilating slightly. Izuku noted his caution when reaching out and accepting his hand. He shook it once before taking his hand back, Izuku doing the same. Hitoshi Shinso. The boy said quietly, his sarcastic tone gone completely, replaced by a cautious and unsure one. Izuku nodded, giving the boy a smile, before turning around to greet the other two. They were still staring. Izuku now felt a similar feeling to the boy now behind him. He nervously stepped towards them, standing in front of them nervously and shakily, putting out his hand. I'm Izuku Midoriya. I heard. The boy interrupted, his heterochromic eyes judging him silently. After a moment of time, his sister sighed and stepped forward, taking the hand and shaking it. Izuku's personal red would return quickly, but he was able to get rid of it just as quickly. I'm Shako Todoroki. My brother is Shoto Todoroki. The sister, now identified as Shako, said. Izuku nodded, before standing for a few moments, just kinda waiting for the awkward silence to end. When it was passing the moment of awkward silence and into awkward tension, Izuku pointed behind him and muttered an apology before speed walking away. The indigo-haired teen gave him a raised eyebrow before walking on his way, passing the two siblings. Once the two were gone, Shako gained a small smile. Shoto, on the other hand, kept his neutral face. Not too aggressive, but not friendly either. No. Yes. I'm not going to like him. You don't like anyone, Shoto. He's more unlikable than everyone else. You say that about everyone. For good reason. Shoka looked at her brother and shook her head. He was trustworthy. She could feel it. If only her brother would actually listen to her and open up to other people, then he would see that the world isn't as bad as he thinks it is. It was surprising to her. She had the biggest physical scar, but he had the biggest mental scar. She didn't know which one showed more. Izuku dashed out the gate, taking long strides. With the speed he was going, that meant a step every 30 or so feet. He was attempting to escape the awkward tension that he had created by running into the girl Shako Todoroki. He sighed, closing his eyes for a split second. I really need to work on talking to girls, the older teenager said, making a mental note to ask All Might for advice. Wait, why don't I just ask him right now? Izuku skid to a halt, taking his phone out of his pocket. Unlocking his phone, he texted All Might. Izuku, hey, I need advice on talking to girls. The reply was almost immediate. Number 1, what? Toshinori was having a mediocre day. Running around, doing errands, that wasn't too bad. He could think while doing things. He needed to in order to be the number 1 hero and still not be left behind. A migraine was coming on. And then his phone buzzed. He immediately knew who it was. He gave a smile. His current object of pride known as Izuku Midoriya. He bet this was something about how he finished moving in or made a Friday. Toshinori's smile dropped dramatically, his pupils disappearing in the shadows that covered his eyes. Number 2, hey, I need advice on talking to girls. Oh no. Young Midoriya. What mess have you gotten into that requires this to be answered? Number 1, what? Number 2, well you know how we have dorms? Number 1, yes? Where was young Midoriya going with this? Number 2, wouldn't it be awkward if I mess up talking to one of my fellow female dorm mates? Toshinori put 2 and 2 together. Number 1, you made a bad first impression with one of your dorm mates, didn't you? Toshinori could feel Izuku's curse out of embarrassment. Number 2, maybe? Toshinori put a hand on his face, covering his eyes, before sliding it down his face. Oh, young Midoriya. Why did you choose me? Number 1, just be yourself. Number 2, but being myself is what got me into this. Number 1, give it time, young Midoriya. A few minutes of silence would proceed before he got a response. Number 2, all right, thank you. Number 1, you're welcome, kiddo. It will all be All Might now. Number 2, I'm blocking this number. Number 1, wait no. Ever ran with a bed? Izuku doesn't recommend it. To say he was barely managing to not shatter the frame while sprinting because he slammed into something was understandable. On the bright side, he finally got it to his room. Now that Izuku thought about it, his dorm room was quite large. Larger than his room at home. More room for decorations and whatnot. Maybe an actual shelf for his hero journals? Thoughts for later. This time, Izuku carefully exited his room. Even if his hearing told him there was no one there, he'd rather not be on the bad side of anyone else. He took one last look at his room, smiling, before closing his door and beginning to calmly walk downstairs. Yes, they had an elevator. Yes, he preferred the stairs anyways. Izuku got to the ground floor, before feeling his stomach growl. In all the excitement of moving his stuff in, he had completely forgotten to eat anything. He began to sheepishly search for a kitchen. Kitchens meant fridge. Fridge meant food. After searching around, he had finally found the kitchen, but to his misery, the fridge was empty. There wasn't even anything he could use to make something. He must have gotten here before they could stock the fridge and pantry. He'd have to fix this, definitely. He didn't pride himself on being a good cook, but he could definitely make something edible. It was one of the things Inko made sure he could do after learning of the dorm system. Izuku, feeling his stomach grumble once more, sighed. Well, crap. He made his way to the door, knowing he was going to have to pick something up. Either that or outright sprint home. It hadn't occurred to him until now just how big the building was. And how homey it felt. It was great. Of course, he still would have to visit his mom. She was his mom after all. As Izuku exited the building, the colors of the sky brilliant with the sunset. Yeah, he was going to need to be quick. Then his hearing picked up running. Wait, it was coming towards H-Do. After miserably failing to dodge, and being tackled to the ground, he realized quickly that he was wrapped in a hug. Quickly canceling options, he came to a conclusion, one that was verified immediately by the person speaking. I see. You made it. It was Itsuka. Izuku gave a small laugh, unable to move in the vice grip that she had on him. His face was quickly becoming increasingly red, reaching tomato levels within a few seconds. Itsuka, could you please get off? She seemed to realize the position they were in, and quickly got off, her face also becoming a shade of red. Izuku got up himself, wiping off his pants back of his shirt. So you made it. He spoke, to which Itsuka's face quickly lost the shade of red, being replaced by one of cheerfulness. Yeah. I'm in Class 1B. I'm in Class 1A. Itsuka's cheerfulness suddenly dropped a notch. Izuku realized that she was probably sad that they wouldn't be in the same class. But we can still hang out during lunch. That did the trick. You're right. Hey, Itsuka, where'd you go? A voice called out. Izuku quickly turned to see where it came from, seeing a boy with gray hair, followed by a boy with blonde hair. They spotted Itsuka, and made their way over, Itsuka's smile growing. Oh, Izu, these are some of my classmates. He's Tetsu Testu, and the blonde one is Nito Minoma. Izuku raised a hand and waved, giving a small laugh as the one with gray hair approached him. He gave a sharp, toothed smile as he held out his hand. Izuku grabbed on, and shook it, to which his smile seemed to only grow. Like she said, I'm Tetsu. I'm Izuku Midoriya. A record scratch could be heard as the blonde one, Minoma, looked at him like he was insane, while Tetsu gained a new shimmer in his eyes. You're the guy who beat the 0-pointer? He exclaimed, startling Izuku with his sudden change in attitude. Why a dash? That's so cool. Can you really fly? Are you really that strong? See, Itsuka stepped in, giving a small laugh and saving Izuku from the barrage of questions. I'm sure he'll answer your questions later. It's getting late and I'm sure he was going to go do something else, right? She looked over to Izuku, to which he nodded. See. Tetsu gave a huff, before a determined gleam appeared in his eyes. Alright, but we're sparring too. There's no way I can meet the guy who beat the 0-pointer, and not fight him. Alright, I'll make a rain check on that. Now. Bye. With that, he awkwardly sprinted away, making Tetsu's eyes widen, his smile grow even bigger. He has a speed quirk too? Itsuka laughed softly at her friend's reaction. She knew that he was going to make sure that Izuku fought him. Minoma, on the other hand, seemed to be fuming. What? So he thinks that just because he's from 1A he's superior. We'll show him. Class 1B will show them just how superior we are. He began to laugh as Itsuka shook her head. Great, now Minoma has a rivalry with them. This was going to be a fun year. Izuku managed to pick something up, and then made sure to grab some groceries before returning. After he came back, he noticed that there still weren't many people around, except for the people he already awkwardly introduced himself to and a red-haired kid. The red-haired kid spotted him and made his way over, a sharp-toothed but friendly smile taking over his face. Hello, he said to Izuku, who was walking over to the kitchen to put the groceries he had gotten into the fridge. Izuku turned around, returning the smile. Hello. So, you're in our class? What's your name? I'm Eijiro Kirishima. Just like Tetsu. Personality-wise, at least. Well, Kirishima, Izuku spoke in between putting things in the fridge and pantry, I'm Izuku Midoriya. A repeat of what happened earlier in Sud, Kirishima's eyes widening and glistening with newfound respect. Izuku barely noticed a set of floating clothes bound over and a pink-skinned girl go from a blur to an actual as she appeared. You're Midoriya? The same guy who destroyed the 0-pointer. That's so cool. The floating set of clothes supplied. Did you really do it? The pink-skinned girl excitedly exclaimed. Izuku felt cornered, but he managed to keep himself calm as he continued to put things away. Why yes, I destroyed the 0-pointer. It was about to hurt someone so I saved them. That's so manly. Kirishima exclaimed, the pink-skinned girl nodding, and Izuku assuming the invisible girl did the same. He was guessing by the curves. The pink girl pushed Kirishima aside. She had pink hair as well, along with eyes that had a black sclera and a yellow iris. Midoriya found the combination of colors nice. Her smile was very bright, and the fact that she seemed to have no concept of personal space made his face go red. That's so cool that you beat the 0-pointer to save someone. I'm Mina Ishido. Her personality was an excited one, an extrovert. Midoriya feared any poor soul who was spotted by her. He really had to get her to back up. Or him. He took a step back, and now found himself against the counter. He was trapped, and unfortunately for him, Ishido seemed to have missed the sign. The floating clothes then pushed past Ishido, and though Midoriya couldn't see her, he could hear her heartbeat, so he had a general idea of where she was. Her personality was nearly a perfect reflection of Ishido's, being as extroverted and bubbly. "I'm Toru Hagakure. With you in our class, we'll never have to worry about anything, I'm sure of it." Midoriya was not used to attention, negative or otherwise. When he gained his quirk, people just backed off. Although, some people did occasionally talk to him. Itsuka was a special case, and Kaken. He wasn't sure if Kaken wanted to see him succeed or was enraged at his very existence. Thankfully, Kirishima noticed the greenette's uncomfortableness and gave off a small laugh, pulling the other two away from him. "Sorry about that, Midoriya. These two are just really excited about, well, everything." As if to give justice to his comment, Ishido made a small huffing sound, and judging by the darker shade on her cheeks, Midoriya could guess that she was blushing. Toru gave a "hey," which only caused Kirishima to laugh some more. After a few moments, Midoriya was left to himself. "Well, at least I know some more of my peers. I know one of their quirks, and I bet the other one has pink skin and all that because of her quirk. Although that raises the question of why pink skin? And were those horns? If I didn't know better, I would actually think she was an alien. Huh, aliens actually existing, or at least being on Earth? What are the odds?" After finishing the rather short mumbling session, Midoriya finally finished putting stuff away and dug into his food. The next 2 weeks had passed by relatively quickly. Shako would give him a few short good mornings, while Shoto would just glance at him, although his glance was getting friendlier every time. Shinso seemed to just listen most of the time, when he was around. Sometimes he'd be gone and Midoriya had no idea where he went. Beyond those three, Kirishima made it an effort to hang out with him. From what Midoriya knew, his quirk was hardening his body. He was unsure what the limits were, and if this went as far as hardening his internals, or if it was just external. Ishido's quirk was her ability to produce acid from her body. Izuku theorized that the change in skin color and hair was a mutation to protect her from her own acid. As for the horns, Izuku had no idea. Toru's was rather easy to deduce. Her quirk was invisibility. So far Midoriya's theories were that she either cancelled all light that came into contact with her, or light warped around her. Those two would sometimes join him and Kirishima, or even just try to hang out with Midoriya, which was something he wasn't used to in the slightest, and would result in him being incredibly awkward. They either didn't mind, or found it adorable. He couldn't tell which one it was, but either way, it was unexpected for the greenette. Now that Izuku thought about it, he thinks he saw Ishido and Kirishima at the test. More students had arrived, another one being one he recognized. It was the blonde one, the one with the smile. Izuku and the boy locked eyes, before the boy winked and walked away to join his peers. Izuku made a note to work on being less intimidated by the smile. His other classmates were just as surprised as the others when he introduced himself. Reuniting with Momo was nice, and the only struggle that really came from it was helping her move in. Uraraka showed up, and she was very excited to see that he was in their class. Very bubbly, very nice. The one that proved most awkward thus far was the blue-haired boy, the one with engines in his legs. Tenya Ida, as Izuku learned, was very robotic in his movements and professional in his wording. But through that, Izuku could tell that he cared, and he was very apologetic towards Midoriya for guessing his character without any second thought. And then the day came. "Du. Oh Lord. Oh no. Katcha." Izuku barely got to speak before he spun around to be face to face with Kaken. He was said? What did he do? What did he do now? Then his eyes squinted, his brows lightening. But I didn't want to be stuck with a bunch of extras I didn't know. "Well, Kaken, I'm glad to know you're happy to see me." Bakugo let out a humph as he went to begin moving his stuff to his room. The only person he even let look in the direction of his boxes was Midoriya. Anyone else was toast. Soon, dinner arrived. Well, more like dinner time. Midoriya was cooking in the kitchen, making katsudon while Bakugo made some curry. It seemed Kirishima smelled it and made his way into the kitchen, a pleasant smile coming onto his face. "Hey, I didn't know you could cook. That's pretty manly." Bakugo growled, irritated at the intruder into his domain, while Midoriya gave a light chuckle. After Kirishima stayed in the room for a few moments, Izuku turned his head, sighing. "You want something?" Kirishima's smile grew in size. "If you wouldn't mind." "I mind, shitty ha. I'll make some more then." Kirishima pumped his arm in victory, and Bakugo turned and glared at Midoriya. Midoriya shrugged and began to make more. Kirishima entered the kitchen again, laughing nervously. "Hey, Midoriya? Yeah. The class kinda wants him too." Izuku stopped, freezing for a moment as he processed that, before nodding. Katsuki had to restrain himself from blowing up shitty hair to hell. "Tell the class I'll make some for everyone, just to be patient." Kirishima nodded, and went out to tell them to calm down and wait. About half an hour later, and he had managed to make enough for everyone. Walking out, he saw everyone sitting around, before their smiles brightened at the smell of the food. Bakugo went to go sit down at an unoccupied table, well, mostly unoccupied, while Midoriya passed out food to everyone. Denki Kaminari, a boy with a black lightning bolt running through his blonde hair, was sitting with Hantashiro, a boy with a flat smile and black hair. Next to him was a rather big guy, bigger than even Midoriya, who seemed to have 6 arms, with webbing in between. He was also wearing a mask. How was he going to eat? And one of the arms turned into a mouth. He was going to get more information later. Mizo Shoji, he remembered. Across from him was a boy with large lips and a very bulky nature. Rikido Sato. Finally, filling the table was a kid with a rock-like head and a big body in general. He was shy, so no one really bothered him. Kohi Koda. The boys were mostly just talking, Koda keeping quiet and just listening. At the next table, Ashido and Hagakure were chatting excitedly while Kirishima just shook his head in amusement. A blonde boy with a tail, Mashireo Ojiro, was sitting across from them, sometimes putting in his input. Also at this table was Yuga Oyama, the boy with the smile, and a boy with a bird head, Fumikage Tokoyami. The third table had a girl with headphone jacks for earlobes, Kyokajiro. Next to her was Momo, and also at the table was a girl with large eyes and mouth, Tsu Azui. Next to her was Uraraka, who excitedly nodded at him, Midoriya giving a small smile in response. He failed to notice Momo stopping for a second looking at the smile. Shako was also here, and next to her was a popsicle? No, upon closer inspection, it was the short boy that Izuku had quickly deduced was a pervert. Anyways, he was frozen solid and unconscious. Shako gave a small smile towards Izuku, causing him to smile back again. Both Uraraka and Momo faltered at that. And finally, at the last table was Bakugo, Ida, Shoto, and Shinso. Bakugo noticed Izuku standing there, and motioned with his head to his side, an empty seat there. Izuku took the hint and sat down, Ida on his other side. "So, Midoriya, I have to thank you for this delicious meal. Its texture is quite good as well," Ida proclaimed. Izuku gave a nervous laugh. "Thanks, Ida. It's not much, but I wasn't expecting to cook for the entire class." Shinso looked at him, raising an eyebrow. "Well, with how good this is, I wouldn't be surprised if the class made you the dorm cook." "Can you make soba?" Shoto interjected, startling Izuku for a moment. This was the first time he'd actually spoken to him in 2 weeks. "I could try. I'll need a recipe though." Shoto looked like he was thinking for a moment, before nodding. "I'll get one for you." Izuku gave a nervous chuckle, and Shoto went back to eating. Bakugo gave what could be a ha, before closing his eyes and swallowing his food. "The only one who's cooking for me is me. Even if I make some extra spicy curry?" Bakugo rose a finger, before lowering it, growling. Midoriya basked in his victory as Ida robotically got up. "Well, as good as this dinner has been, Midoriya, I believe it is time to get ready for bed. I shall head to bed, and I recommend you all do the same soon." And with that, Ida went to put his dishes in the sink, before heading to bed. Bakugo got up as well, doing the same. "Good night, extras." No one bother me, or the shithead who does is getting blown to the fing moon. And with that he was gone. Shinso suppressed a laugh, finding it funny how two completely different people were going to bed at relatively the same time. Izuku actually managed to talk to Shoto tonight, and found that he was socially awkward. Not in the way he spoke, but in the way that he didn't understand social norms. Shinso stayed mostly quiet, but spoke sometimes. Eventually, the room began to get emptier and emptier, until it was just Midoriya, Hitoshi, and Shoto. And then he says to me, "This training is going to get worse," and I look up to him, crumpled on the floor, because he just punched me in the stomach and took me down within seconds. Hitoshi finished with a small laugh. Shoto seemed both amused and aggravated. Midoriya was struggling to not laugh. "My trainer also has no concept of taking breaks," Midoriya put in. "Even with how tough I already am, his training was grueling, to say the least. My old man beat my butt until I could fight back." That killed the mood somewhat. Hitoshi and Midoriya looked at him with something akin to worry and horror. "My sister got the same treatment. I don't know how she can." He stopped himself. Too much information. Hitoshi raised an amused eyebrow, although it looked forced. "And here I thought we were finally going to hear your tragic backstory," he commented, failing to realize that that didn't help Shoto in the slightest. Midoriya let out a yawn, before stretching. He stood up, pushing his chair in before looking at the other two. "We should probably go to sleep now." "It's pretty late," Midoriya said, his exhaustion not failing to present itself. Shoto stood up, taking Midoriya dishes before he could grab them, and walked into the kitchen. Hitoshi stood up as well, a smile coming onto his face. "The best way to get into a person's heart is through the stomach, huh?" he commented, to which Izuku let out a laugh, before beginning to walk towards the stairs, Hitoshi following. Assuming by the running water, Shoto was probably going to do dishes. Making his way upstairs and into his room, Midoriya flopped onto his head, his curly green hair flailing just a bit before flopping onto his face. He closed his eyes, a smile coming onto his face. This class was full of interesting people and he already made some friends. Shoto was iffy, but it seemed the two were on relatively okay terms. As he drifted off, he began to think about the adventures that the future held for them. Those were to come later, though, so he focused on sleep. A light snoring soon filled his room, as the moon shone beautifully in the sky. A week had passed. Izuku had managed to bond with Shoto, just a bit more. Thankfully, it seemed that whatever hostility the bicolored hair boy had has subsided, and they are able to sustain a friendship. The popsicle, Izuku now knowing it as Mineta, has revealed to him that he is an absolute pervert. Izuku made a mental note to keep an eye on him, especially while he was around his female classmates. Bakugo's hostilities seem to have kicked back in, though, at least when it comes to Mineta. Izuku will never forget the day he saw the boy stuck on the roof because Bakugo blasted him up there. When Shinso informed Izuku of his quirk, the indigo-haired boy was taken aback by how ecstatic Midoriya was, and how he listed all the ways that could be useful, such as hostage crisis, or even taking control of a villain and using him against his own allies. Shinso seemed to have taken that to heart. Momo hung out with Midoriya when she could, along with Achiko and Ida. Kirishima often called him manly, and Ashido and Toru giggled whenever they saw him. Midoriya didn't know why, and he was afraid to ask. Ojiro was often out training in what was essentially a dojo, and Kaminari was playing video games. Izuku joined him sometimes, and they had fun. Jiru was often in her room, same with Shoji, and Sato liked to bake. He very much liked to bake. Midoriya made a note to ask for tips. Shoko would sometimes just hang around him. When he asked if she wanted to do something, she declined, and said she just wanted to hang out. Fumikage also spent a lot of the time in his room, though Midoriya could always hear him talking to someone. Aoyama turned out to not be intimidating at all. In fact, he turned out to be one of the least intimidating in his class. He was just eccentric. Tsuyu liked to spend her time at the pool. Koji was either outside talking to animals or inside his room, talking to what Midoriya was pretty sure was a rabbit. Shiro also often played video games, and would always be there when Midoriya played with Kaminari. He also managed to hold Bakugo off from murdering Mineta after he made a perverted comment about Momo. And finally, the day arrived. Midoriya and his classmates walked towards class, their first day about to begin. "So, who do you think our teacher will be?" Achiko asked cheerfully, looking at the rest of her classmates with a smile. "I'm unsure on who we'll get. I know that whoever we get will be competent, though," Momo replied, looking forward as she walked. "I hope they aren't strict." Mina supplied. "Ditto." Toru agreed. "Whatever, as long as they don't let Mineta be as perverted as he is," Jiru commented, to which all the girls agreed vehemently. "I'm sure that any competent teacher would notice him," Shinso supplied. "Oh, come on. What's wrong with me?" Mineta asked, feeling accused of crimes he didn't do. "You're a shitty pervert, that's what," Bakugo replied, the venom in his voice clear to all that heard it. "Bakugo! That is not how we talk to our fellow classmates." Ida reprimanded, to little success, only receiving a scoff in reply. Shoto, Midoriya, and Shoko walked quietly, all listening to their classmates' antics. This sure was an interesting class. Everyone arrived to class, all surprised by the rather large door. Everyone but Ida, Midoriya, and Achiko were in their seats. Ida began to reprimand Bakugo for sitting the way he was, much to Bakugo's annoyment and anger. Midoriya and Ochako were talking, in between where their desks would be. "If you're here for friends, you've come to the wrong place," a tired voice said, startling the class, especially the three out of their seats. In came a rather tired and roughed-up man, with long black hair and a messy mustache and beard, looking as if they weren't shaved yet. He had a scarf around his neck and wore a black shirt and pants. Midoriya recognized him, but he couldn't place his finger on just who it was. "It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. You kids are wasting time." The entire class was startled to realize this man was their teacher. The hopes everyone had for their teacher was thrown out the door with this realization. "I'm your homeroom teacher. Shota Aizawa. Nice to meet you." He sounded so unenthusiastic that no one believed it for a second. He walked up to his desk, before reaching down and taking out a gym uniform. "Enough pleasantries. Put this on and go out onto the field." "What's?" Uraraka said, confused. "What about the entrance ceremony? The orientation?" "If you're going to be a hero, you don't have time for such events." Everyone was taken aback, except Shoto, Shoka, and Bakugo. UA's selling point is how unrestricted its policies are. It gives us teachers the freedom to do what we want. After some murmurs went throughout the class, Bakugo was the first one up, taking the gym uniform and walking out. The others followed him, and soon, they were all lined up, out on the field. This is a Quirk assessment test. Think of it as a physical fitness test, but you're allowed to use your quirks. The class slowly nodded at that. Aizawa turned to Midoriya, before turning to Bakugo. "Bakugo, what's your best softball throw?" Bakugo didn't get cocky as per usual. He simply answered, 67 meters. Then, Aizawa held out a softball. "Try doing it with your quirk." Bakugo took the ball and walked into the circle for the softball throw. "You can do whatever you want as long as you stay in the circle." Bakugo grinned at that, stretching before throwing the ball, an explosion accompanying it. "Die!" Bakugo yelled, and the ball rocketed into the air, dust and fire swirling before dissipating are settling back down on the earth below. Circles formed around it as it flew into the air, before falling back down to the earth below. Aizawa heard a click from his phone and looked at it, and showed it to the rest of the class. 750 meters. 750 meters? Seriously? Kaminari said, a sweat drop forming and falling down his face. "This looks fun." Ashido added, holding her hands together in awe. Shinso looked on, impressed, his eyes wide as Midoriya took it in. "I knew Kaken was powerful, but that's impressive." He idly commented mentally, now having yet another fact to place down in his hero journal. "We can use our quirks however we want. As to be expected for the hero course." Zero exclaimed excitedly. "It looks fun, huh?" Aizawa said calmly, and the entire class stopped at the way he said it. "All right," he began again with a smile. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential and will be punished with expulsion. Everyone took this in quickly. Even Shoto's poker face failed, his eyes widening as his mouth opened slightly. Shoka mirrored him. It was more out of shock than worry. Shinso's already wide eyes widened further, and sweat formed on the boy's forehead. Midoriya raised an eyebrow. He had heard of an entire class being expelled last year, because none of them had potential. Oh no. He knew he'd make it, but what about someone like Shinso? He turned to look at the boy, whose frozen shock was all he needed to understand that Shinso knew how bad this was. Shinso, while having a powerful quirk, was not the best physically. He heard almost everyone's heartbeats quicken, while Bakugo's, Momo's, Shoka, and Shoto's stayed calm, along with Aizawa's. We're free to do what we want with our students. Aizawa lifted his hair up, and his eyes would have looked crazed if the sanity in them wasn't so solid. Welcome to U.A's hero course. Achiko had a problem with this, small drops of sweat running from her forehead. Expelled? But it's the first day of school. Even if it wasn't, that's too much. Aizawa took it in, and responded rather coldly, logically. Natural disasters, big accidents, and calamities which can't be predicted. Heroes are expected to fix these. Life isn't fair. You'll be overcome with hardship after hardship. Here at UA, overcome them with all you've got. Plus ultra. Aizawa's speech had its intended effects of bringing out his students' determination. Ida took a bottle from his pocket and drank from it, and Bakugo continued to stretch out his limbs. Demonstration's over. The real thing starts now. First up was the 50-meter dash. Tsuyu and Ida were up first, both of them in a running stance. Well, no, Tsuyu's was more of a jumping stance, but it was similar enough. Get ready. Ida's intense focus showed, his face scrunching up just a bit, as Tsuyu changed her stance slightly. Get set. Ida shifted upwards a bit more, whereas Tsuyu stayed the way she was. Go! And like that, Ida became a blur, running at his full speed. Tsuyu jumped, her powerful legs causing her to fly into the air. Dust billowed behind Ida, and he flew past the finish line, the robot at the finish line calling out, 3.04 seconds. Tsuyu quickly landed near there, hopping again and crossing the finish line. 5.58 seconds. Aizawa wasn't impressed, but he acknowledged that the kid was fast. The class looked on, intrigued and impressed. They quickly joined the rest of their class, as the engines in Ida's cab smoked. Next up were Uraraka and Ojiro. Uraraka tapped her shoulder and then her shoes before the dash started. Ojiro bounced using his tail, while Uraraka ran as fast as she could. Ojiro passed first. 5.49 seconds. Followed by Uraraka, 7.15 seconds. Achiko looked pleased as she tapped her fingers together, nullifying her quirk's effect on her clothing and shoes. That's faster than I was in junior high, she exclaimed mentally. Next up were Aoyama and Ishido. Ishido had taken off her shoes, while Aoyama turned around, his smile plastered on as always. Everyone, you're not being creative enough. I'll show you what it's like to be allowed to use your quirk. He jumped up and blasted his laser, causing him to go flying backwards. Although, this only lasted for a few moments before he fell, Ishido passing him by using her acid to make the ground slippery. He quickly got back up and mimicked what he did. He quickly caught back up, but failed to pass Ishido before the finish line. 5.30 seconds. 5.51 seconds. Next up were Midoriya and Bakugo. Bakugo looked forward, determined, while Midoriya did the same. This was his chance to see how he's improved. As soon as the race started, Bakugo looked to his side to see Midoriya completely gone. Then the whirlwind of dust came as he shot his head forward, seeing the blur that was Midoriya. He began using his explosions to improve his speed, but Midoriya was already there before he could even begin trying to catch up. 1.58 seconds. The time caught the entire class off guard, including Aizawa. Ida noticed that the ground cracked where Midoriya ran. To say that Speedster was confused was an understatement. Shinso didn't even know how to react. Momo knew Midoriya was fast, but it was still surprising nonetheless. 4.13 seconds? That snapped everyone out of their trance. Bakugo looked sad, but didn't act on it, much to everyone's relief. The rest of the class wasn't anything extraordinary. Shinso got a surprisingly good time. Mineta was the one with the worst time, even if he had used his ball, stop it, to bounce. The next test was grip strength. Midoriya's quickly exploded in his hand, it sparking and smoking. The rest of the class looked at him, before another explosion promptly went off, Sato having crushed his in a sugar-induced state. Shoji looked at his 540 kilograms, and was both impressed and worried, now knowing that whatever their strength was, it was incredible. The third test was the standing long jump. Bakugo exploded forward, overcoming the obstacle. Aoyama used his laser, also overcoming it with ease. Midoriya made sure his stance was solid, before jumping. He flew into the sky, before landing on the other side, kicking up yet another dust cloud, and forming a small crater as a result. Uraraka had floated over, Ida had a running start, and Tsuyu was a natural jumper. Shoka had formed an ice bridge, and Shoto followed what she did. Shinso placed last in this one, Mineta's ball actually being useful this time. The fourth test was repeated side step. Mineta bounced between two clumps of ball he made, becoming a blur as the momentum picked up. Eventually, he accidentally flew off into the distance when he tried to step forward and get out of the sidestep. Midoriya also became a blur, but quickly stopped when he accidentally caught his own leg, face planting into the ground. The final test was the ball throw. Uraraka scored infinity, her ball having flown into the abyss that was space. Kaminari was shocked and Kirishima was amazed. Shoka and her twin were silent, as per usual. Shinso was either not impressed at this point, or too tired to be impressed. After the class settled down, Izuku was left. He took a stance, green lightning sparking off his body, and he threw the ball, the lightning suddenly stopping. The ball landed about 89 meters. Izuku furrowed his brows in confusion. "What? I erased your quirk." Aizawa's voice came from Izuku's left, and he turned to face him. His eyes were glowing red, his hair and capture scarf floating in the air. Izuku finally realized who it was. It was Eraserhead. Eraserhead. "I've heard of him, he's an underground hero." "You've been holding back, Midoriya. The entrance exam showed you moving faster than a bullet. I want you to do your best, not hold back. Don't make that mistake again." Aizawa closed his eyes, the red glow gone. His capture scarf and hair went back down. He was disappointed. This test was to set their current limits, and in order to do that, they need to not hold back. "I've returned your quirk. Hurry up, and get this over with, we have other tests to complete." Midoriya nodded, before taking his stance again after grabbing another ball. He closed his eyes, for a moment, breathing in and out. "Everyone, please take a step back," Midoriya requested. Everyone did so. Momo looked on, determined for her friend. Bakugo scoffed. "Don't disappoint me, you DMN nerd." Midoriya's eyes snapped open as green lightning crackled around him, and he threw the ball. Smash! A crater formed around him, but other than that, not much seemed to happen for a second, except for the ball disappearing from his hand. And then it hit. Dust blew up from around Midoriya, a sonic boom blasting out from in the sky. The ground shook, and crazy winds picked up and hit the class. Aizawa had his capture scarf wrapped around Mineta before the boy flew off, Ida putting a foot forward, putting a hand out in front of Ochako and Aoyama. Jiru had her ear jacks slam into the ground, and Momo had a tungsten shield in front of her. Bakugo slid back, explosions forming in his palms and making sure he didn't fly backwards. Kirishima's skin had hardened, using his hands to catch both Toru and Dishido. Siro's tape latched onto the ground. Sato was holding onto Koda, and Fumicage's quirk, Dark Shadow, was holding onto the ground for dear life. Shoka and Shoto created a reinforced ice wall together, sparing Shinso and Anaro from the sheer power of the throw. Shoji had spread his arms out, becoming a human shield for Tsuyu and Kaminari. After a few moments, the winds calmed down. Shoka melted the ice wall, and the entire class looked at Izuku, both amazed and horrified. "He's an absolute monster." Kaminari thought, his eyes wide. So manly. Kirishima mentally cheered. Momo threw her shield aside, smiling at Izuku. She didn't know he was that strong. That was amazing. Achiko and Ida looked on, both sets of eyes wide as they took in their friend's power. After a moment, Aizawa's phone beeped. He looked down and read out the number slowly, as if to confirm that was what he was looking at. 100.51 kilometers. The entire class was shocked at that. No, it was more than shock. It was amazement. Even. The class looked at Izuku, now thoroughly impressed, and having a healthy bit of fear. What are you? Rang in most of the class's head. Izuku finally came out of the crater, his arm bruised slightly. Thankfully, that was all that came from it. Aizawa went from not impressed to thoroughly impressed. The kid would need to work on control, though, seeing the bruises on his arms. Whoever's next, step up. We're wasting time. Midoriya went to join his class as Kirishima stepped up to the plate. Everyone was staring at Midoriya. Shota noticed this and gave out a small sigh. That got everyone focused. The next test was sit-ups. Midoriya got first place with ease. After that was the seated toe touch, and Ashido got first place, easily reaching forward and keeping it there. I have to be flexible so that I can break dance. Ashido exclaimed happily, the class letting out an "oh" of new understanding. The final test was an endurance run. Bakugo, Midoriya, Momo, and Ashido were the last four. Mom had a moped, Bakugo refused to give up, Ashido was doing her absolute best, and Midoriya was running laps around them. Eventually, Aizawa called Momo out, and after that, Ashido dropped, breathing heavily due to running for so long. Midoriya had slowed down, and Bakugo was refusing to stop. After what seemed like forever, Bakugo finally dropped, quite literally. His hands were slightly burnt, and Midoriya quickly followed him and stopped, falling over and gasping for breath. Even as fit as he was, that was exhausting. Everyone was gathered around, and Aizawa stood in front of the class, his usual face on. Okay, I'll quickly tell you the results. The total is what you got from every test combined. Aizawa brought up his phone. It's a waste of time to explain verbally, so I'll show you the results. The entire class became nervous, and the results flashed up on the screen. Izuku had claimed first place. As the class looked at the listings, Mineta cried out in horror. I'm in last. I'm going to get expelled. By the way, I was lying about the expulsion. The entire class froze at the news. Shoka and Shoto had no part in that. It was a rational deception to draw out the upper limits of your quirks, Aizawa supplied, the biggest non-amused grin ever seen on his face. Ida's glasses cracked at the revelation. Uraraka looked confused beyond redemption. Mineta became a blur. Shinso's eyes widened as if he was just told his entire life was a lie. Momo let out a small laugh at her friends, except Mineta, reactions. Of course that was a lie. It should have been obvious if you just thought it through. Jairu and Kaminari looked at her, mentally thanking her for telling them. With that, we're done here. There are handouts of the curriculum on your desks in the classroom, so when you get back, look over them. With that, Aizawa walked away. Izuku could hear a conversation between All Might and Aizawa take place after he turned a corner, and his eyes widened when it was confirmed that Aizawa had in fact expelled an entire class last year. He looked over to Momo, and the look was all she needed to know before her face went pale. Uraraka and Ida were confused, but after Izuku told them, Ida's glasses cracked more, and Uraraka looked like she was going to vomit. Shinso, having overheard, did vomit. With that, the day had ended. The class was dismissed, and everyone began to walk back to the dorms, separated into their own groups. Kirishima and Kaminari walked with Bakugo. Ashido, Toru, and Momo walked in their groups, Izuku hearing Momo's heartbeat pick up a little. He could also swear the other two did as well. Ochako, Ida, Shinso, and Shoto hung around Izuku, and Shoko was with Tsuyu. Mineta was with Shiro and Sato, and Koji was with Shoji and Jair. Fumikage and Ojiro were silently walking together. Aoyama was by his lonesome. When they reached their dorms, Izuku got started on making dinner for everyone. He made sure to make a plate of soba for Shoto, and make some katsudon for himself. He also gave a little spice to Kakens. After preparing the food, he made his way out and gave it to everyone. He sat down with Shinso and Shoto, Uraraka and Shoka on the other side of the table, with Ida on their right. Shoto bit into the soba and swallowed it. He looked at Midoriya, his eyes as unenthusiastic as normal, his poker face on full power. Midoriya looked at him, and after a few moments, Shoto spoke. "You have my permission." Midoriya became incredibly confused as to what that meant. Permission for what? Shoka's heartbeat picked up, and Momo skipped a beat. He had failed to notice the fire that blew up from Shoka for a split second. Maybe Shoka and Shoto talked about something? Ashido squealed from the other table. Shinso snorted, and Uraraka looked like someone had just killed a puppy in front of her. Ida was just as oblivious as Midoriya. Permission for what, Todoroki? He chopped at the air. Maybe one day he'd finally defeat the oxygen demon. What are you talking about? No answers would be given, as Shoto went back to quietly eating his soba. Midoriya would be stuck thinking about this. Yeah? The nerd in Bakugo was quickly silenced by the effort of Kirishima. The next day started off simple. English class was first, and Midoriya was quick to learn. Present Mike could be very quiet and tame when he wanted to. The whiplash from him being loud and excited to quiet and tame was immense, and he could see that some of his fellow classmates felt the same way. Bakugo just looked annoyed. So normal. So dim and boring. Although he could still get excited. He just wasn't as loud. Thankfully. After that was Midnight's class, Modern Hero Art History. Quite the mouthful. Midoriya kept note to keep Mineta in check, although, with the way Midnight is able to scare the small boy, he thankfully wouldn't have to actually pay much mind to it. Third PRD was Cementas's class, him teaching modern literature. Izuku already liked this class, as did Momo. Cementas, thankfully, did not dump a whole lot of work on them. Fourth PRD was mathematics with ectoplasm. Midoriya had to physically restrain himself from fanboying. It was getting harder by the class. Maybe he could catch them outside of class and ask for an autograph? Maybe. Anyways, after noticing her classmate's struggle, Shoka tried to help by icing his feet to the floor. It did not help. It was freezing and terrible. Finally, lunch came around. Gourmet foods for a good price. Midoriya sat with Ochako, Ida, and Shinso chuckling at Midoriya very clearly in awe of Lunch Rush. White rice is great comfort food, isn't it? Lunch Rush said excitedly. It seemed the hero was as happy as he was a good cook, which was entirely welcome to Midoriya. Ochako gave a nod in between eating. Yeah. And finally, heroics class. I am. Izuku gave a smile. Rather than just a smile of a fanboy, this was a smile of comfort, of fondness. The bond between the mentor and the apprentice was strong. Family-like even. Admiration and respect shone from his eyes. Coming through the door like a normal person. All Might came in and the class gasped. Shinso's eyes widened at the sight. Not only did he make it into the heroics course, he was going to be taught by All Might. That was amazing. It's All Might. Kaminari said excitedly. Wow, he really is a teacher. Kirishima added, raising a fist up. That's the costume from the Silver Age, isn't it? Tsu observed as All Might dramatically and quietly walked over to his desk. Its style is so different, it's giving me goosebumps. Ojiro added. Shoka and Shoto seemed unfazed as per usual. I teach hero basic training. It is a subject where you train in different ways to learn the basics of being a hero, All Might explained. You'll take the most units of this subject. Let's get right into it. This is what we'll do today: combat training. Bakugo's feral smile broke out on his face. Midoriya smiled out of excitement. Shinso felt some sweat prickling on his forehead. Shoka and Shoto continued to remain unfazed. Momo was indifferent, as was most of the class, including Ida. Kirishima pumped his arm in excitement. And to go along with it, All Might pressed a button on a remote, and shelves came out of the wall, numbers based on their seats. Costumes made based on your Quirk registrations and requests you sent in before school started. The class reacted excitedly to that. Change into your costumes, and after that, meet me at ground beta. The class all gave him a confirmation and began to get ready. Midoriya got up as well, taking his suit out of its shelf. Right then, he heard the pang noise from before. He hasn't heard it in months, so it was interesting to hear again. Izuku made his way to the locker rooms and got changed. He then began to head for ground beta, his first heroics class about to begin.